It's episode 9 of the Gaming Memories podcast, where I, your friendly neighborhood prophet, seer, revelator, the only man ordained to communicate with the gaming gods in behalf of you, my digital congregation, also known as Roboclip, the blessed beatmaker, aka Cade Call, interview interesting people about their favorite gaming memories growing up. On this episode of the podcast, we have no shortage of interesting as Chase Henson joins us for a weekly gaming sermon. Chase Henson is a fellow drummer, which makes him a bona fide badass. He slams the drums, he's got great technique, great chops, and he plays for a very interesting band. They're kind of like a indie avant-garde, sort of all over the map. They ebb and flow between a bunch of different styles. They are called Mome Wrath. M-O-M-E space W-R-A-T-H. Make sure to check them out. I'll put links in the bio, links in the description. Chase is also a Smash Brothers pro gamer. Not really a pro gamer, but I met Chase at a Smash Brothers tournament in college, and he whooped my ass. Last, and definitely not least, and in my opinion, Chase's most bona fide badass accomplishment is he is a self-taught concept artist and illustrator. He travels all over the country selling his artwork. He does a lot of video game inspired fan art as well, and you can see that at artofchasehenson.com. Of course, there'll be links in the bio in the description. On this episode, we touch on how Chase, with absolutely zero prior knowledge, no experience, learned that you could do art for a job designing things for video games and movies, decided he wanted to be a concept artist with absolutely no understanding about what that would entail, where that would take him, how much work it would be, and put his nose to the grindstone and started teaching himself. Years and years later, through sheer grit and determination, he has one of the coolest styles and best artistic capabilities I've ever seen. We talk about traveling, selling art all over the country at different conventions. We touch on the legendary, pun intended, Legend of Zelda franchise and how it is the main video game franchise that now inspires him to do art. And last but not least, we both get a little bit tipsy and just shoot the shit in general about video games. I had a fantastic time talking to Chase today on the podcast. Make sure to go forth and spread the good news of the gaming memories gospel. Miyamoto the Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack the Holy Ghost have revealed to me through revelation that you will be blessed for sharing the good news of the Gaming Memories Gospel. Also, to make sure to give Chase a like, share, or subscribe. Check out his band Mome Wrath, M-O-M-E space W-R-A-T-H, and check out his art website, artofchasehenson.com. Again, all those links will be in the podcast. Otherwise, enjoy the show. And we're recording, but we can start officially whenever you'd like.
Dude, I'm ready to go right now, man.
Ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right, man. Welcome to the podcast. I'm going to have like a little intro that I'll record later. It'll make you sound super dope. So people should have an idea of who you are. But we can give them a recap. I know you, I believe, I was thinking about it. I met you at a Smash tournament, right?
Yeah.
Was that right?
Yeah, dude. Yep.
Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was the gym, because I saw you at the gym a bunch. But I knew it was a Smash tournament.
The anime club was putting on a Smash Fest, and we just showed up. And then you remember Diego? We were just like hanging out. Like, let's hang out afterwards. And we just played Smash a couple times. And then, dude, that was like...
It was a long time ago.
That was at least 10 years. At least.
It was the Wii Smash, I believe, right? Not GameCube?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And I remember you saying you wanted to get into art, and now 10 years later, that's pretty much all you do, it seems like.
Dude, that's literally all I've been painting all day. Like, this is what I do now.
Yeah.
When we first got together, when we were first hanging out, I was like, I mean, I didn't start doing art till I was 22 when you met me. So I just started making art for the first time ever in my whole life. So you were looking at my stuff, and you're like, yeah, this guy. Yeah, he's going to be an artist. 10 years later, dude.
I never doubted you.
Everybody did. And then when you start getting good at it, they're like, oh, I never doubted you. That's just generally how it goes.
That's how it goes for everything. Are you doing... I mean, I see you doing a bunch of illustration work. I've seen you on Instagram pop up like at some. Looks like you're doing different cons and expos.
Oh yeah, yeah. So this year I've been really focusing on doing conventions. As far as like artists making an income, there's a couple different venues that they can hit. They can do freelance illustration, working for big companies, doing like board game covers or, you know, little icons for games, or working for Magic the Gathering, just like simple single illustrations. Or you can go into the convention scene. You go to Comic-Cons throughout the country. There are people who just do conventions all across the country, sometimes, you know, in Europe or wherever they're going. And they just set up a booth and they sell prints and they sell originals, they sell play mats, they sell all kinds of stuff of their art or whatever company they were working for. So I've been hitting the convention scene really hard. I just need a couple different revenues for income. If I want to make art a full-time thing, like I've been planning to for the past 10 years, then I absolutely have to hit the convention scene, for now, at least.
So what's the ratio of convention versus other revenue streams you're doing from art?
Conventions are unique because you can make zero money or you can make an unlimited amount of money. There's no cap to how much money that you can make, right? You froze.
Am I still here?
I'm not seeing you anymore.
Can you see my beautiful face?
Okay, good.
I'm back. I'm back.
Yeah. So, yeah, conventions, you can make an unlimited amount of money. There is no cap to how much you can make per painting that you made. Let's say, like, I did a Breath of the Wild painting for Zelda, which is one of the most influential games, and we'll get into that in a minute, that I've ever played in my life. I make one painting, and it makes about 90% of my profits right now at a convention, and I can sell 700 prints. I mean, I don't sell 700 prints, but in a year's time, I could make $6,000 on a single painting selling prints. $25 a piece, selling canvas prints. So there's literally no cap to that. As long as you hit, you have a good style, you hit sometimes fan art, sometimes you don't have to do fan art, but outside of that, man, conventions are like the bigger, as far as independent art goes, it's like one of the best ones you could do.
So when it comes to a question I have with Breath of the Wild and fan art, I had another guest on who, I'm going to lower my gain a little bit. Check. I had another guest on who I don't know if you know him, he does a Tamu Media. He does like basically fan art, prints, like office work. Some of it's all on Etsy. Anyway, maybe. I asked him, I'm like, so is it technically, because his best-selling piece was an Uncharted trilogy where I had like Nathan Drake and the three main areas. Like it was like kind of custom, but it's obviously using their character, and he sold a bunch of them. And I'm like, I asked about that specific thing. Like, so you could just sell this online, go to conventions and sell it, and no one does anything? And he explained it as more of like a gray area. There's
so much gray area.
So where do you sit in that whole thing?
I'm sitting on the very low end of that gray area. So I have a professor that I went to school with. His name is Will Terry. Big shout out to that guy. He's one of my favorite people ever. He did a series of pieces of fan art of all kinds of pop culture characters as like babies. You know, they're like Darth Maul holding a double-sided binky or a bottle or something.
Okay, yeah,
you know, that kind of style. And he goes to conventions, and I'm just giving a rough estimate. He makes like $10,000 a convention. So he recently ran his second Kickstarter. And he was up to almost $300,000 on the Kickstarter for a book of these paintings.
Prints,
you know?
Yeah.
Marvel contacted him and shut it down because he was making so much money off of their IP. Even though it's stylized, even though it's changed a little bit, they still have legal rights to shut him down because essentially it's copyright. You're ripping off their IP and you're making money off of it. But in the low end convention scene, I mean, there's how many conventions per state in every single state nowadays, right? Maybe 2 or 3. There's hundreds and hundreds of artists selling fan art, and they're not doing anything. It kind of promotes their fandom, right? It supports what he
said. He basically said, kind of goes parallel with what you're saying. If you get to a certain point where you're making enough money, someone might come knocking on the door. But otherwise, they don't really want to shut down the fan base
And
No.
it's like, and in a way, it's sort of indirect promotion. If someone loves Zelda and they come to you and buy a Breath of the Wild, they're super into Zelda. They're probably going to buy the next Breath of the Wild at launch day.
Exactly. Right. And to go after every single artist who's selling fan art, how much money are they going to spend on lawsuits versus how much they're going to get out of them? So they're only going after big bucks, right? The people who are making 300,000 on a Kickstarter or et cetera, right? So in that sense, in the convention scene, and I have about 50-50, half fan art, half original work. But yeah, I mean,
And
I'm sitting in that gray area.
That Breath of the Wild piece is your best-selling fan art and your best-selling work currently, right?
Yeah. That's so the fan art. So let me back up. Most of my income comes from fan art at the conventions. Half of it, well, more than half comes from the fan art. Breath of the Wild piece is like 90% of all of my profits, right? I don't think those numbers made sense, but that one makes the most money at any convention, anytime. So I have to have tons of stock. That's like my golden goose.
Do you have an online shop where people can find you and buy this stuff?
Yes and no. I have a Society 6. Actually, if you go to my website, you click on the store, it'll take you to it. But they take so much from me. Like if I sell a canvas print, it's like, I don't know, $75, but they take like 70% of that.
Wow.
So I don't really sell online because running an online shop is so much of a hassle and it's just really not worth it. So I typically just do conventions and sell in person and go to these places.
Nice. What other fan art have you done that's done well besides?
So I had a Captain America piece that I did in college. It's like really painterly and loose, and it's like old school Cap with his first outfit that he wore, like, you know, the World War II jacket and the blue helmet. I had that one. That was my first big seller, and that was like all of my profits. That one's starting to phase out, which is kind of the problem with fan art. You know, characters become less popular over time. And there are your classics, like anything Lord of the Rings always does really well. Dragon Ball Z is hot again, but you know, those really like legacy fan art things, those stick around for a while. So Captain was good for a minute. Right now it's Zelda. I have a couple, I have a painting of the Shire. I'm actually working on a painting of a Lord of the Rings painting when Éowyn, I believe it's Éowyn, or when she summons those water horses and they sweep up the Black Riders.
Yeah, down the river. Yeah.
So I'm working on a painting a piece of fan art. So I'm going to premiere that at FanX in Salt Lake the beginning of next month. I've done a lot of Lord of the Rings, actually. I've done like 4, because that's just classic. You can't beat Lord of the Rings. Like, there's nothing better.
Would you say no, fighting scares me, but outside of anything video games, it sounds like Lord of the Rings is your favorite, I guess, pop culture franchise.
Oh yeah, that was the first fantasy IP that I got into. My mom introduced me to Lord of the Rings as a kid. I remember when the first movie was coming out when I was in the 8th grade, and she convinced me to read the books before the movie came out, and oh my God. Like, I'd never been introduced to anything so fantastical in my life. You know, I've watched movies, but movies never really sink it in. But you read the first 3 Lord of the Rings, man, like, that's heavy.
Did you read any other books at that time? Or was that also like your first set of books you got into?
I don't. Actually, Harry Potter was my first fantasy book. I started in like 5th grade, and I read all of them, all 7 or 8, whatever they're at now, multiple times. So that was my first intro. But Harry Potter is like the first evolution of fantasy. You know, it's like the Charmander when Lord of the Rings is like the Charizard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's really basic and it's great. It's classic. It's a legacy, but it's no Lord of the Rings.
So you were into reading a little bit, but Lord of the Rings came and just blew your little
Slapped
mind.
me in the face.
Yeah.
Slapped me in the goddamn face.
Were you playing games at this time? What was the first game, the very first video game you can remember?
My very, very first video game, I'd have to say like Super Mario 3 on Nintendo.
That's a pretty common one.
Yeah, that was the first one I remember really enjoying. I think I had a bunch, but none of them really stuck. I was really young, you know. I'm 31 now, so
yeah, you're 3 years. I was young when the NES came out as well, so you would have been really young.
Yeah. So that was like the Mario games were the ones that stuck in my head. You always had that friend in the neighborhood that had more games than you, so you'd go to their house a lot to play all their cool games.
Yeah.
So I remember playing like Battletoads and other games like at friends' houses and stuff like that. But I think the first game that really sunk in, God, it had to have been Legend of Zelda. The Ocarina of Time, man, that was like, I remember my mom actually we were at Blockbuster in Provo, and she's like, do you want to rent Ocarina of Time? And I was like, no, that looks dumb. I was not into it at all.
So you skipped, so you didn't really, nothing really stands out to you from NES or Super or Sega? You were too young?
I had Sega, yeah, but I guess Sonic was a big part of my life. I guess I skipped that whole generation. Sonic was great. I had Mortal Kombat.
But nothing really stands out until Ocarina of Time.
Not really. They were just like things to do. You know what I mean? And games that I would play with my friends.
You weren't into gaming or identifying as a gamer at that age.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
All right, well then let's hit it up with Ocarina. So why'd you think it was dumb?
Because I saw a preview for it and I'm like, that looks stupid. And I was an arrogant little shithead. Like, it just looked dumb. The first like open world, and I'm like, fuck it. I don't need it. But I did eventually get it, and I played it, and I just was. I remember it being super hard, and I remember being blown away by the art style, Nintendo, and just the whole Zelda. Their visual language is so unique and so fucking timeless. You can't. I'm going to say this a lot tonight, but you can't beat the visuals on that. If you really like stylized work and you like character development and you like complex puzzles and gameplay, like Zelda is always going to be there. It's always going to be there. So I remember going back multiple times to play that game. I don't think I ever really beat it until I was like in my 20s, dude, because it was so hard for me at a young age,
Yeah, that's that game. I remember being really stoked about it because there was some hype behind it. I had played the SNES Zelda. I had a similar experience when I first played it. It was a little difficult. I was a little bit older than you.
Yeah.
But it was the first game that I remember waking up on purpose really early in the morning, like 4:30 to 5, so I could get a couple hours in before school.
Yeah.
That's how, like, I don't, and to this day, I mean, maybe in college there might have been some late night. I can't think of a single game another game where I did that. I would wake up, and I remember beating it. I did beat it, but I beat it at like 6:30 in the morning, and I remember beating it before school, and then going to school and just thinking like, well, what now? Because it had consumed my soul. Like every waking moment, I was thinking about that game, and then once it was over, I had to like readjust to normal life.
Yeah. So Zelda was my first obsession, and now that we're talking about like staying up late, Pokemon Red and Blue on the Color Game Boy. That was just before Zelda, I think. I don't actually know what the timeline was for that, but it was more accessible because Game Boys were cheaper, right? So I had Red and Blue, and I played the living shit out of that game. So as we backtrack, Pokemon first, probably, Zelda second, Red and Blue, and then I had Pokemon Yellow, and then Fire Red and Leaf Green, like 10 years ago when they remastered them.
So you went through all the Pokemons.
Yeah, I didn't get past like Silver and Gold and Platinum and fucking...
Oh, yeah. I don't even know how many there are. I did Red and Blue.
Ruby. After about Leaf Green and Fire Red, that's when I stopped playing. I wasn't really into the newer ones. I know I'm a hack, but whatever. I've got a Pokeball tattoo on my calf, and I haven't played the new ones. I'm a pushover.
Well, it's okay. Did you do the rare candy shit on Pokemon Red and Blue?
When the cheat code with the missing no?
Where you swim. I remember you swim to an island and back. Some menu
Cinnabar
thing.
Island. I literally could show you right now if we have the game what to do and how to do it because I did it so many times.
Yeah.
To copy my rare candies.
Yeah, I remember copying the rare candy. I didn't do it till the very end, and then I had red and blue. And my memory might be wrong, so correct me. If you had red and blue, you could get Mewtwo. If you had all of them, like some sort of game transfer thing or save transfer.
So you can catch Mewtwo in the cave, but you have to use a Master Ball, and you have to weaken him down to like 1%, and then put him to sleep or poison him, like some kind of like triple threat to him. He was really hard to get.
I remember I somehow got him, and then I did the rare candy thing to him, and then it was just like so overpowered. I would just walk around. I'm like, okay, well, this is cool, but now I'm bored because they just kill everything.
You're one-shotting everything.
Everything, yeah. But that's definitely. I couldn't get into the later ones, but the Game Boy one. There's a lot of people. I mean, obviously Pokemon. Pokemon was also, because you're a visual guy. Like one of my first experiences with Japanese animation, and like that. I didn't like the humor. Was weird to me, especially when they dub it.
Really campy.
But the stylized action, like there was no American cartoons that had action that was styled like anime. And the same thing with waking up early. I would wake up early on Sunday mornings to watch Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
It was on air, like Channel 13 local. And Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z were the only, at least when I was that age, the only thing I could get a hold of when it comes to Japanese animation.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Early 90s, or I guess early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of access to media. We only had cable TV, right? So I remember Sunday mornings, actually mornings before school, my friend and I would watch Pokemon, reruns of Pokemon. And sometimes we'd miss the bus because we're just so into an episode about Sandshrew, like just getting beat up at a gym or something, you know? We're so attached to these characters as kids. And then I remember watching Dragon Ball, definitely Dragon Ball on Toonami when they were doing... who's that robot dude? I think it's just called Toonami, right? The robot guy in the spaceship.
So.
Anyway, it was like late night stuff, Adult Swim or whatever it was at the time.
Did you ever rent any anime from Blockbuster?
No, maybe.
Because I got a hold of some. Like once I kind of figured out, like, oh, this Japanese stuff all has this really cool action scenes.
Yeah, dude.
I rented. Have you seen Ninja Scroll?
Yeah.
So I rented Ninja Scroll. My dad let me get it. He's like, oh, it's just a cartoon. My family's like super hardcore Mormon, and my dad's like, but it's not rated, right? It's some Japanese. He just thinks it's a cartoon. So do I. And then he gets to the scene. For those of you who haven't seen it, I think I mentioned this in another episode. There's a scene where like a girl, she's like the king's bodyguard, and she's been poisoning her body her whole life, so she's immune to poisons. But her blood is like her blood. If you kiss her, you'll like get poisoned and die.
Yeah, dude.
Well, this like demon monster basically starts to rape her and sucks on her boobs. And my dad walked in like right when that was happening, and he flipped shit. And he thought like yeah, he was bad. He thought I knew. I was like, I swear I didn't know. I just like, and I was like, I think I said I just like Pokemon and Dragon Ball, and I thought this was gonna be like that. And it was, by the way, the action, it was awesome. And I ended up getting a hold of that movie later and finishing it. But it was hard. And like, if you were into visual style, and to this day, the only thing I've seen, have you seen Attila or Alita Battle Nun?
Oh yeah,
Alita. There were moments where I'm like, this feels like a Western movie, but it captured some of the anime with its own, like, it was close.
Yeah, it was a Western translation of anime. It was just like, it was a weird combo. It was like fusion.
There was parts I didn't like, and there was parts that were mind-blowing.
Yeah, the graphics were amazing. The whole show was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, those old school, like, Pokemon's always been a big deal for me. I remember as a kid, like, playing Pokemon cards. Speaking of, like, games, that was probably, it's not a video game, but it was my first obsession in about 5th or 6th grade. I can promise you that I was the first kid in that school to bring Pokemon cards. Me and my friend Scott.
You were the OG.
Pokemon cards. I am literally the guy who brought them. And people would make fun of us for playing Pokemon cards. We had no idea how to play, but we just like set up in the in the recess area, and eventually got so popular that everyone in the school was getting them and they were trading them. And then we got into 6th grade, and it was so like commissary. We were trading them back and forth, and we were ripping off kindergartners, giving them like a Diglett for a Charizard or something. You know what I mean? Eventually, it got banned from the school, and we were trading in the bathroom like they were drug deals. Like, you got that Machamp, dude. We were in the bathroom trading cards, and we had like sheets of like, the books with the sheets and the holographics, and we had them organized by type or whatever. So that was a big obsession for a long time. And I tried my hand at tournaments, and I always got wrecked. I'm not very good. Well, at that time, I wasn't good at strategy games. I was more like a smash and grab kind of gamer kid. Too much energy, ADD out the ass.
That story is really similar to what a lot of people experienced. Because I'm 4 years older than you, 5 years older than you. We had the same thing happen. I wasn't the OG, but Pogs got really big at our school.
Yeah, dude.
And
Pogs were first.
Pogs were first, yeah, I'm sure. And
sorry.
No worries. In fact, I'm going to use this chance to take my hoodie off because I'm hot.
Yeah. Yeah, Pogs were super popular.
I have to plug in I plug up my AC vent because it's loud when I do podcasts, so it starts to get hot in here. Yeah, Pogs were, I don't know who started it. I don't know. Did you play Pogs at all?
Oh, yeah. That was the first thing that got banned in my school. I was in 1st grade or kindergarten or something.
You would have been a little young. I think I was 5th grade or 6th grade. We did this. It's funny when you said ripping off kindergartners. We did the same shit with Pogs. And that's actually why it started to get banned, because kids would figure out they're getting screwed and they tell their parents. So they had the rule. It's like if you play, whatever you flip, you get a keep. And I was really good at what they called knifing, throwing the slammer up perpendicular up and down instead of flat. I had this really skinny, it was like a shuriken, like ninja star looking one. And a lot of people would ban those because they were really good. So I would just play with kids that didn't know, you shouldn't play with someone with one of these because you can. I could flip 100 Pogs perfect. And I remember I made my cousin cry. I got his whole collection. I made a bunch of younger kids.
Wow.
I was pretty much an asshole. And but props to the parents. Like my cousin, I took his whole collection. We played a game. He was a couple years younger than me. We were at school, sitting in between the doors of recess. I took all his Pogs because he didn't want to give up. I took everything, and we actually lived close to each other. And he went home and told my uncle, and was crying about it. And my uncle was just like, "Hey, you bet it. That's the way the world works." It was just hardcore. I thought I was going to get screwed. Yeah,
that's a good uncle.
But Pokemon. Let's see. I would have been in junior high. I don't remember Pokemon. I remember some kids having them. I remember obviously Magic the Gathering has been kind of popular forever.
Yeah.
But I don't remember Pokemon cards. So I must have missed that trend.
Yeah. It was my last years of elementary, and then once we got into junior high, nothing was cool. You couldn't bring anything from elementary. You had to be a totally new person, right? Janko jeans and skateboards. Dixon Middle School.
Where's that?
In Provo.
It's in Provo?
That's in southwest side of Provo by how could I explain it? Right when you get off the Provo Center Street freeway exit, and you're going east towards the mountain, it's on your left side, a couple blocks north.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jinkos. That's a good nostalgic memory. Jinkos, man. All the rollerblader kids loved Jinkos in my school.
Fruit booters, man. I was a skater, so we make fun of them. They're fruit booters.
Hey, I hope my good friend Omar Prestich, who's been on the podcast, doesn't listen to this episode. He's a fruit booter. He's a hardcore fruit booter. And one of his first games he got into, I think he said it was PlayStation 1. It's called Inline Skating. I don't remember it, but it was a rollerblading game. He hates the term fruit booter, so sorry, Omar. Sorry, we're just joking around.
I was just a cool kid in junior high, so I had.
You skated though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you skated a little bit.
I was not good.
Skateboarding is so hard. It is so hard.
I can ride a board pretty good, but I cannot trick at all. There's nothing left.
So after Ocarina, so you had a 64, obviously, to play that game. What other... That was the first game that sucked you in. Did you start getting into games more and playing more games because of it?
Yeah, I think so. So I'm trying to think, like... The 64 just had so many good games that I was... Like, James Bond, right? The first James Bond, 007. The first multiplayer shooter that I remember ever playing. And the missions were insane. It was just like the graphics are horrid. Their heads look like balloons if you put edges on them, like an octagon shape. I don't even know how to describe their forms. Triangles was like everything was triangles. That was probably the first that was the first shooter for me. And I was probably, I don't remember what grade that was. That was a big game for me. I'd bring all of my friends over. That was like the first game where I brought people over to my house to play games with me. I don't remember any other game outside of the Sega. You could only really do 2 controllers for a while. I guess you could do 4, but 64 really supported a four-player game format.
Well, it had 4 ports natively, which none of the other consoles had. Had a bunch of 4-player games. We had like Mario Party, Mario Kart.
Dude, Mario Party! Oh my god!
Yeah, I've had some fun times with that.
Late nights. You don't even have to be a good gamer to play that. That's what made it so fun.
Mario Party is a great. If you just have like nothing to do and some homies or a group of people want to get drunk and just kind of casually play a game. Mario Party will turn it into a fun night. It will make it a party, which is funny because it's like this little kid game. But some of the craziest parties I went to in college, people were playing Mario Party.
Yeah.
And it was just getting out of control.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Mario Party was huge. I had a couple. I had like 3 and 4 or something. I can't remember. Those are the first big games for me. Really, like socially, those were a lot of fun. Man, what else did I play? There's a lot of little games. Diddy Kong Racing. I don't know why that's been stuck in my mind for so long. That game was a lot of fun. It was just so goofy.
Yeah, it was. I liked what was different about it is Mario Kart had tracks. Diddy Kong and then later Crash Bandicoot Racing had like an open, sort of semi-open overworld that you could explore and then get access to the tracks, and there was secrets, and so it had a little bit of that like Mario 64 element, like exploring the castle, finding secret levels, etc. That's what stuck out to me at Diddy Kong. Is Mario Kart with more exploration and more secrets?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was pretty much it. Different characters. And speaking of Mario 64, probably one of the first games that I obsessed over, I think. Like, having to get all of the stars and exploring the castle in 3D, and just like the controls, the way that you would move Mario was so different to me. I don't know what it was. And I don't know if you remember which one came first, Ocarina of Time or 64. Remember
Mario
that
64 definitely came first.
That was like their flagship for the 64 when it came out, right? Yeah. So that one was a big deal for me. Man. Dang, dude, the nostalgia pipe is huge right now. Mario 64, James Bond, Ocarina, Diddy Kong was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think what else. Actually,
at your friend's house, did you have access to PS1 or any other games or PC games at friend's house?
Yeah, well, my friends all had. Usually, most of my friends had PS1s, and I'm literally looking up a timeline of 2000s games right now. These are, let's do 90s games. Yeah. For some reason, as a kid, I wasn't really into PS1. I think I just had this like Nintendo or die kind of attitude as a kid, so I didn't play a lot of PS1 games.
As you were playing the 64 and getting more into gaming and doing the Mario Party, bringing friends over, GoldenEye, 64, was gaming still just sort of a hobby and you weren't like into pop nerd culture or anything yet?
Yeah, no, I think because I actually struggled a lot in elementary school, junior high, high school. I didn't do well as a student. It just didn't fit me. I had ADD and ADHD really hardcore. I used games as a way to escape, but I was never obsessed. I was never like really, really into it. But I did play a lot of them. You know what I mean? I just used it as a means to pass time and to avoid my homework or responsibilities as a kid, which isn't healthy, of course. But like, I didn't really consider myself a gamer at the time. I'm looking at Tony Hawk Pro Skater. That was epic. That was one of my jams back in the day, dude. Just so many. I don't know, dude. Gaming has really shaped the way that I when I was young, I used it as a way to escape, right? I used it as a means of avoidance, to avoid my responsibilities, to not feel guilty about not doing well in school or not doing well as a person. So I used it as a way to escape, but it has influenced me so much that it actually is the thing that got me into art in the first place.
That's what I was going to ask next is like, obviously, I think you were blown away by the art style of Ocarina in that world. Did you start thinking about doing art then, or was it just like, oh, this looks cool, but the idea of doing art hadn't popped in your head yet?
Well, it didn't pop into my head until I was in probably about a year or two before I met you, and I had no idea, had no clue that being a concept artist was a job. That someone was designing monsters, someone was designing environments, someone was designing characters, all of which requires some 2D art. You know, someone's got to design these monsters. Someone's got to design the way that Zelda looked or Link looked, right? I had no idea that this was a job. And once I found out that people were designing monsters for a living, I was like, what? Why am I in college to be an aircraft mechanic? I was literally going to...
I didn't know that's what you were doing. That's not a bad job, by the way. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's better than it's slightly better than being a car mechanic, but when the economy crashes, that's the first industry to go, like travel and
that makes
aircraft
sense.
stuff.
And I guess if you fuck up, people die, then you probably feel terrible.
Oh yeah. People die if you fuck up.
Yeah, that's a lot of stress.
So I was in school to be an aircraft mechanic. I was about 21, 20 or something. And I just started drawing to keep my attention in class because, you know, classroom settings are just not traditional classroom settings really trigger me, and I just can't pay attention. I really, really, really just start daydreaming. I think about random stuff, mostly fantasy stuff, because that's what I use to escape. And so in the long run, it definitely helped. But I was in class and I was drawing, and then I found out concept art was a thing. And at that point, I was just like, I don't like doing this. I switched to UVU, studied illustration. I didn't know where to study first. They were trying to send me to the digital media department, like the programmers for games and stuff. And then I talked to one of the illustration professors, and he was just like, no, you should be in illustration. If you want to design for games, environment design, character design, whatever. So it was because of gaming, and I can't give this enough credit. If I wasn't into gaming, even a moderate amount, then I definitely wouldn't be an artist. I would have no motivation to do fantasy. I wouldn't have the motivation to create characters or these crazy gods and goddesses that I'm working on right now. All of the gaming that I did, even if it was in small games, it doesn't matter if it was Resident Evil or Final Fantasy, these games all had an impact on me. Granted, they're just kind of time killers for most people, but it was enough inspiration for me to be like, this is a job and it's possible if I'm just good at it. Okay, I'm going to just jump in. Luckily, I was just ignorant enough to jump right in and be like, yeah, I'm going to be a concept artist. Had no idea how fucking hard it was going to be to actually be good at art or even moderately good. Jesus fucking Christ.
That's
10 years.
I mean, that's what I did, start a record label. I'm going to do music, just naive. And then I switched to do a different business because that's why I wanted to talk to you. Is you stuck with it. I put 7 years into music, and then I shifted. I'm well, I gotta pay for wife and kids. I need to do something that has not everything's competitive. But what's interesting about the music, or now that I actually have a really good friend I want to hook you up with. His name's Kelton Cram. He's going to come on the podcast. He does concept art. He did like the new Jumanji. He did all the Turtles, Transformers, like some big stuff, and he does a lot of kind of indie stuff as well too. I'll link you guys up. But
that'd be awesome.
I was talking to him about it as he was coming up. I was doing music, and it's really, there's some industries where the top 1% make it, and then the top 1% of those actually make a decent lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's where like music and, and there's other industries where like the top 10% make it, and 8% of those have like, it's still competitive, but it's not as like zero sum, I guess. There's only so many big movies being made, and they only need so many concept artists. There's only so many big video games being made, and there's a very limited cap to jobs out there for concept art.
Oh yeah, for the big guys, for those big high-end jobs, they're all hiring each other. They're all friends, right? Because they're on top. Yeah, and there's a lot of like smaller mobile gaming, right? There's a lot of small people making just games for your phone, right? They need illustrators to do their load screens, to do their icons. There's a lot of work. It's just hard to find them. It's hard to get your name out, especially with the internet being making it easy for everyone to get their portfolio out there. Like there's no way to predict what road you're going to take. You can't just say, I'm going to be a concept artist for AAA titles. You can't. You literally cannot plan that. Because every step that you take, every convention that you do, you meet someone new. Every meeting, every podcast, like what if we meet up with this other guy? You guys hook us up, or you hook us up. Like we talk. Maybe I get some big jobs from it. Maybe I don't. Maybe we become friends. Like you just have no idea.
Maybe you become homies, and 10 years later it turns into something. You never know.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's all of these small baby steps towards success. And sticking with it the entire time is fucking grueling. I have sacrificed every part of my life, my social life, my love life, my time with my dog, the time with myself. Like I spend every single day making art, and it's still, after 10 years of doing this a lot, it still doesn't feel like enough, and it feels like I'm still playing catch up, right? Because I started late. I feel like I started late. I was in school with people who were drawing from the womb. They came out with a pencil in their hand, like drawing.
That's what I was going to ask. With your ADD, were you not doodling in elementary and junior high school?
Not. I don't remember a single moment in my life. Maybe once or twice where I tried to draw, and I did a house with a square and then a triangle on top. Like how everybody else does it. But until I was 22, did I not?
Oh, so you dove in. You dove in with I'm going to be an artist, even though I've never done art.
Blank slate, complete blank slate, no experience, no idea, and luckily no bad habits because I had not developed any of those. That's true. Right?
That's a good point.
So I came into a college atmosphere with professional artists teaching these classes, teaching me from a blank slate, saying you need to focus on the fundamentals now. So that's what we're going to do: color, value, composition, anatomy, lighting, whatever, and giving me all of this information all at once from a blank slate. And I progressed faster than most of the students in my class, right? I was blowing past them at the last year that I was in college. The first 4 years were grueling, being the worst one in the class almost all of the time.
Yeah.
Until about the last year of school when I was really just like picking up steam really quick, And I haven't been in school since 2016. So it's been about 3 years now, 4 years. Yeah, beginning of 16. So it's been a little over 3 years. And I've progressed a lot. I wouldn't say that I am professional yet. I would say that I'm entry-level professional, and I'm just starting.
But you're getting there. Like you're seeing consistent progress. It's just, like I said, anything that's professional. Have you heard the 10,000 hour rule? I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
And my first big hobby getting into was drumming, and I did like a ton of drumming from about 11 until 18, like 7 years. And I sat down once, and I just remember being obsessed. Like, I had a class in high school that I could practice. Then I'd come home and practice more. I'd practice on the weekends. I remember, like, hours and hours working on rolls, throwing my sticks, getting frustrated, like, trying to learn the song. And, like, I put a lot of hours in. And then later, when I learned about the 10,000 hour rule, and I got good, but obviously I go online and people would be so much better than me. I think, how?
Dude.
How? Like, I've practiced so much drums. And then I calculated the hours, and I was at probably at 3,800 hours.
Oof.
10,000 hours is a lot of hours. Like, it doesn't sound that long.
It's a lot.
It's about 10 hours. It's about 10 hours a day for 8 years.
Yeah.
The thing is, you can't do anything 10 hours a day. You can't focus
for 8 years.
For 8 years, so you're getting at most through 4 hours on . For me, drumming, the longest practices I probably would get in was 4 hours, probably the max.
Yeah. Yeah, you're looking at 20 years before you master. And that was an average number, right? But it really put in perspective how much work actually had to happen, which was great for all of us, right? I'm probably, I don't even know. There's no way I could calculate how many hours, because every day is different. Every day is Friday. Instead of going out to the bar, I spent 10 hours painting. And I haven't done that for a long time. So I don't spend 10 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't spend 10 hours a day. I spend, because my process is very efficient, I paint digitally, so I have a very quick style. I have quick steps. I figured out the process pretty well. I can finish my most intense painting right now is maybe 15 hours tops. If you go to my website and look at the top 3 images, one of those might be 15 hours. The rest are under that. So I do spend a lot of time creating, and I create a lot of art very quickly. But 10 hours a day, come on, dude. You can't have a social life. I'm single. I get lonely, dude. I want to be in love. You know what I mean? But I also love fucking painting almost more than being in love. And I'll cancel dates. I'll cancel hanging out with friends. I will literally tell my dog no, so that I can fucking finish this painting, because I'm so pumped on every single one. Sometimes they fall flat, sometimes they don't, but otherwise, I spend most of my days painting. It's a very, very lonely pursuit. And I play drums in a band as well. I'm still playing. I don't remember the last time we talked. I was playing in a band a long time ago. You actually did sound. Oh my God, I forgot about this. So you did the sound for my first band on our first show at the Oz Pool Hall. Do you remember that?
Holy shit! I would have never remembered that. I do remember that.
Dude, that was my first show with my first band, and we were so bad.
I remember we showed up, and they were like, we don't even have a mixer. And I was like, well...
They have nothing.
They had nothing. It's I had played a bunch of shows. I'd never been to a venue where they're like, oh, we have nothing. Oh, really? So I remember running around to picking up gear from my studio, calling. We somehow scrapped something together.
Yeah. So a funny story about that. My first show was probably my worst show that I've ever played in my entire life. Not because of how bad I was as a drummer. I was terrible, by the way. I was fucking terrible. I'm glad you didn't stay, because it was so bad. So the drum stage was 3 feet too short for my kit. And the legs of my bass drum hung off the edge. So the bass drum had no stability. So it would rock back and forth, and it had my toms mounted on top of it.
Yeah.
So the weight of the toms and me hitting them would rock it back and forth the entire show. And as I kicked the bass drum, because I had to pull it in
away from you. Yeah.
I had to pull it in tight to my knees so I could barely hit it. It would slide off the edge, and the whole bass drum and the toms on top fell off of this 6-inch ledge, where my stage was. And I had to pick it up off the ground in the middle of a set, stop playing. I dropped a stick, and I didn't have any backup sticks in a bag on my floor toms. So I had to stand up and walk over to grab a drumstick off of the ground in the middle of a song. And it was just disaster after disaster. First show ever. Anyway, and I'm glad you were there. Or at least set it up. That's fucking hilarious.
I had completely forgot about that. Yeah. Great memory. Great memory.
That was.
But you were, at that point, you were into games. So,
yeah.
So once you started doing art, did you kind of get into games more at that point?
I got more into everything. I got more into reading. I got more into movies, anime, gaming, everything that had a visual language that wasn't of this world. I was so
okay.
I think the biggest reason why I started doing fantasy art, because I was so used to shutting out the real world. A lot of my childhood was shutting out like how terrible I did in school. So I used fantasy as a means of escape. So naturally, when I started doing art, fantasy was the first thing I wanted to do. Anything that had nothing to do with our real world. So dwarfs, elves, anything high fantasy, anything sci-fi, anything that just didn't exist, I was super fascinated with. So I got really into anime, because anime is just like, they have the craziest concepts, something that we would never think of for a fucking anime.
That's true.
Like, mind-blowing like just storylines that don't make sense, but they tie them together and they're always good.
What's your sometimes they don't tie together so well. I can think of a few. What's your favorite anime right now? What's the GOAT?
My classic anime, my go-to is always Full Metal Alchemist. Probably the most solid story, like the idea, the visuals, and the animation. Just easily, I could watch it over and over and over, and I have multiple times, the whole series.
I've only seen Brotherhood, the newer one. I haven't seen the original.
Brotherhood is the only one you should watch, because the other one is fucking garbage.
I tried the live action movie, and I made it about 15 minutes in.
Oh my god!
And was just like, how did this? I just remember, like, anytime there's a really bad movie or a really bad commercial, I get this a lot. You know the commercials at movie theaters, the local ones, for like Mountain Star Credit Union, and like these. Every time something really bad video comes out, commercial, anime, I just think someone got paid a lot of money to do this.
Yeah.
And whose job was it to say, yeah, that's good enough. I think this will work.
Some
because
shit
it was so bad. So bad.
Dude, some shit director.
Yeah, I watched Brotherhood on a recommendation from Todd Robbins, Kuma Films. He's on that podcast. And then I watched it late, like just very recently. And then the live action movie came out like 3 months later. So I went straight from Brotherhood to the live action movie, and it was so bad.
Ruined.
Yeah, and for those of you who haven't seen Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I agree with Chase. It's definitely, for a lot of people, even if you're not into anime, I've heard people who are not into anime say that they've watched Full Metal Alchemist.
Absolutely. It's a really, really good intro to anime, because it's not campy. It's that you don't feel like an idiot when you're watching it.
There's a little campiness, but it's very minimal compared to
But if you do the subbed versions and you listen to the Japanese and read the subtitles, then all of that goes away pretty much. Yeah. I don't listen to the dubs.
No, never do dub. If you're going to try anime, don't do
any
dub.
anime. Exactly.
Don't do dub. Just read the subtitles. It's better. What I liked about that, for those who haven't seen it, it's like it has this really cool concept of alchemy, which kind of ties back to the Middle Ages, when people were trying to turn different things into gold. And they call it transmutation, but people have superpowers, like Marvel or whatever, but it's all based on this, what they call the rule of equivalent exchange. Yeah, which is like, you can't make something out of nothing. So they'll use like the seismic waves from the earth moving to change that energy into whatever alchemy, fire or wind or whatever they end up using. But there's like,
you froze on me, man.
Oh, can you my back?
Okay. No, you're good.
Back. And so I was just explaining equivalent exchange. And what I liked about Full Metal Alchemist is it's not really, what's the word? It's fantasy, but it has like a very well thought out rule set. So, it's like sometimes when you're reading Harry Potter, it all makes sense, and then later you go back and you think about it, or you read people critiquing it. Well, like, what if this and what if that, and why this wouldn't work because of that? And a lot of the rules and the spells and the logic don't play out. Whereas Full Metal Alchemist, I spent a lot of time reading it after reading on Reddit and reading reviews of it after. And the rules and the idea of equivalent exchange and how things play out, it all makes sense. They spent a lot of time building that world and the lore, like architecting it out. And so that's why it's so good.
Yeah, so it's levels of the magic systems, right? You have to have, like Harry Potter, for example, there is no magic system. There's no limitation. As long as you know a spell like Wingardium Leviosa, you can lift some shit up, and there's no consequences for the actions, right? You can literally, if you know the spell, you can do it. But with Full Metal Alchemy, you have to give something in order to do something, right?
Yes.
There's limitations on the magic. You can't just do whatever you want, which makes a good magic system great. It makes a story even better when there isn't some vague, like, oh, it's magic, you can just do whatever you want. Like, no, you have to sacrifice your brother to get your mom back, but your mom doesn't come back. She comes back as like some globby whatever. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. That's the opening episode, so
yeah, no,
not too much of a spoiler.
So anime has played a huge role in sort of the storytelling and my fascination with like worlds that never existed to me. So as you and I met right in college, I was questioning my religious beliefs, right? I grew up Mormon. I wouldn't say that I was involved in any way. I never really liked going to church. I just felt like I had to go to church. But I grew up in the culture nonetheless. So I believed in God. I believed in Jesus. So I was Christian.
When I met you, you already had a tattoo, though. So you were already like, ooh, edgy.
So I know. I was like edgy Mormon. I was trying to grow my beard out. I'm sure it was like really thin. So at the time, Diego and I, my buddy that you met, you remember Diego? Him and I were questioning religion. Like, because of him, I started thinking about like, we read books on Buddhism and we read books on just random religions, and then we started reading some atheist literature, and I was really starting to connect with the idea that God, that very specific Christian Judeo God, doesn't exist, right? And then I started to study like, what is the history of God? What is the history of gods in general? Why don't we believe in the Greek gods? Why don't we believe in the Hindu gods? There's 1 billion people in the world that still believe vaguely in the Hindu gods. Not all of them believe that they really exist, but they use them as examples, right? So I started studying mythology, and I started studying the cultural impact of believing in mythology and gods in general. So while I was in college, I started an atheist club, and I went through a very anti-theist. I was one of those asshole atheists that was really in your face, like, your God doesn't exist, and I just felt so hurt. So I was like projecting it onto people, and it was terrible. It was super shitty. And I wouldn't even consider myself atheist. I would just consider myself a believer in mythology. Like, I just believe in active mythologies and inactive mythologies. The Greeks and Hindu mythology is sort of inactive to me. No one really is like following along with it. No one believes in Greek mythology or like Thor or Zeus. Like, no one really actually believes in them anymore, the pagan religions. So it was because of gaming, it was because of anime, and then getting into like atheist literature and anti-theism and then mythology is what pushed me into the work that I'm doing now. So all of these things that I've been doing since I was a kid, playing Pokemon, playing Super Mario, playing GoldenEye, playing fucking Zelda, they were building me up into the work that I'm doing now, right? Yeah. Every artist is influenced by every second of their entire life. So you as a drummer, you as a musician, you as a podcaster, everything you've done led you to where you are right now. So the work that I'm doing now is just an amalgamation of every life experience, every minute of my life. And I wouldn't trade any of it. I would go through every second of it again. 12 years of horrid elementary school and high school, and then another 6 years of fucking college, and 4 years of hating myself, and years of being alone and not having someone to love outside of my family, of course, who are very, very supportive of everything that I've done ever. They're the best. It's just been games have been some of the most influential stuff to me. And I still play games now. I use games as an excuse to relax, right? Making art is really relaxing, but it's still a job. It's still like this career that I'm trying to push. But playing games is my step back. It's my nostalgia. It's the way that I release. It's the way that I meditate. It's always going to be part of my life. And I have to stay on top of it as technology improves, as art improves, as me as a human being gets better. Like, I can't even imagine what VR gaming is going to be like in fucking 10 years, 5 years. Like, it's going to be like Sword Art Online for reals, though. For fucking reals.
Assuming an asteroid doesn't kill us like a Majora's Mask or something, things are gonna get weird.
But we can go back in time. We got 3 days.
Yeah, someone will have 3 days. Maybe that's the new Jesus story. Instead of resurrecting after 3 days, he goes back. What is I'm curious. So, when you make art, I've seen a lot of your recent artwork, which is a bunch of you. Speaking of active and inactive mythologies, I've been following your Instagram, and you do a lot of like god and goddesses. It's been a theme that I've seen you posting a lot lately. When I know other things are influencing you, but just in regards to gaming, you talked a little bit about Zelda. When you're making art, are you consciously thinking of any art styles of games, or is it sort of all go into your subconscious, get filtered by you? Is there anything that stands out, like I really love this art style from this game that I'm trying to mix in somehow?
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about creating a new painting, I generally have a theme. So I started about last year, to backtrack a little bit so I can help explain what I'm doing now. About last year, beginning of last year, I started making some landscapes and I started making some art that didn't really have a theme or continuous consciousness to it. It was just like, I have an idea for painting. Oh, another painting. It was just like random. So I started doing a bunch of paintings, and then I noticed after about 7 to 10 that they all sort of had a theme, and it was generally like epic landscapes, some human, like some kind of beings with crazy powers, like floating rocks in the air, and just like very mythological style, epic people with abilities, just that kind of shit. So I realized that there was a story amongst all this, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just noticed it after the fact. And my friend was like, man, the future of being a fantasy artist is having a personal project, going to conventions, selling your idea, creating your own stories, writing a comic book or doing an art book with stories in it, that kind of stuff. So I realized, like, yeah, there's a theme here. I need to flesh this out. I need to take this idea and just really dig in to my subconscious and why I make art. So I dug into mythology. I dug into my atheist phase. I dug into my childhood to figure out what I really, really enjoyed about storytelling and making art in general. So I came up with this idea of this, because I had a bunch of paintings of gods and goddesses, I came up with this idea about an archaeologist who I was branding as me. This was basically me in the story. This archaeologist named Reed, who was trying to discover that these old gods used to exist. Like, in his world, people kind of believed in the old gods, but there wasn't a lot of proof. So that like harkens back to my atheism, right? Like, does God exist, or what about these old gods? What about all these other gods, the old and the new, right? So this archaeologist named Reed is trying to discover, because he's a celestial archaeologist, is what I've dubbed it, which sounds super epic to me. I'm really excited about
Celestial is a great word.
It's such a beautiful word. It's like epic, and it's godly, and it's like heroic at the same time. I don't know. So he's an archaeologist, and he's on a dig site with some of his, he works for a university, right? He's a teacher. He works for the university, and he goes on dig sites like an archaeologist would to discover artifacts and like dig up some old shit. So he discovers the Book of Olith. On one of his dig sites, he pulls out a chest. Him and his students pull out a chest, and the chest opens, and it's the Book of Olith, this ancient book, the first true evidence that these old gods used to exist. And it tells the story, the saga of the gods and how their famed downfall. So the first story is the first painting on my website. If you go to that one, it's the three sisters of creation, and there are like red, yellow, and blue. And it's like a landscape portrait, and it's got three women. Those are the sisters of creation. And in the book that Reed finds, he reads the stories of them, and it talks about how they created the universe. So every religion, every mythology has a creation story. You know, Hindu mythology believes in the sacred egg, or the I don't know what they specifically call it, but they believe that there was an egg and it was hatched and it created the sky and the earth. You know, Christians believe in the what's their creation story? God created the world in 7 days.
Before that.
Yeah,
7
right.
days.
So every single religion, every single mythology has a creation story. So I am trying to take all of these similar stories within all of the mythologies and create my own. So the first story is the Sisters of Creation. And the Sisters of Creation create the universe, and they talk about how bored they were living in nothing and floating around. So they just created the universe, right? And that's how the universe starts. And then the second story, if you go to my website, which everybody should go to.
I'm on it right now. People will be able to see this as you're talking on the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's artofchasehenson.com. If you're not there already, if you're not seeing it, that's where it's at. And so you can go to my portfolio website to show all of my paintings. But if you click on the tab at the top or on the far right, and you go to the Book of Olith, that's the book that Reed discovers, and it tells the story. So I have 10 stories with 10 paintings, but I'm only showing 6 on my website because I'm working on the book, and it should be out by the end of this year. That's my my life goal right now.
Fucking ass.
So I'm trying to create my own mythology here. So I've got all 10 stories, 10 paintings. I'll put them into a book. There might be more paintings than that. I don't know yet. We're still working on that.
This is dope. I was for those of you who want, we'll get back to video games for the listeners, but I think this is cool. Everyone's a little bit different. I spend a lot of time. I sheepishly admit, because I thought about doing art. I spend so much time on ArtStation.
Dude,
I'm just for those who don't know what ArtStation is, it's like Facebook for people who are fucking insanely good at art, and there's like hundreds of thousands of people that make shit you can't blow, and I'll just like waste so much time. Sometimes I'll just drink, put on a podcast, and just like scroll, because I have this like sci-fi universe based off Mormonism, like kind of a similar thing. I do the same thing when I'm ADD. I create worlds and fantasies. And I've had this idea where basically, did you go on a mission? I don't think you did, right?
No.
You didn't do the mission thing. But the mission thing is crazy. So did you ever read Ender's Game?
Yeah.
So you know how Ender's Game, he's a smart kid. They send him to battle school, and that's where they train people. And this, going back to the Alita, the battle, whatever name, Attila the Battle Hun, or Battle Nun, they had an idea that I didn't know. I thought was my original idea, but apparently it's been around for a long time. But that the tiered city, where you have the city that's floating. It was in Final Fantasy VII. Midgar had like a plate above it. In that movie, I forget what it's called. The city's called in that movie, but they have 3 tiers. And I was thinking of like a post-apocalyptic world where somehow, I won't get into details, but the church basically morphs into this like big sci-fi conglomeration, and they have Zion, which the Telestial Kingdom is the people at the bottom, and they're not fully integrated into the system. And then the terrestrial, and then the celestial, and then there's actually, I don't know if you remember much from Mormon doctrine, there's also like a special celestial, the top level of the Celestial Kingdom in the Celestial Kingdom, and that's
for
like
the corporate leaders.
Yeah, that's the space station. That's gonna be the space station in the sky. But and basically the Holy Ghost, you at 8 years old, if you want to be part, the world is like ravaged, and there was CRISPR. Are you aware of CRISPR?
No.
The ability to, it's like a new technology that came out in like 2012, 13 it was discovered, and allows them to genetically manipulate DNA with a high level of accuracy for a lot cheaper than it used to be.
Yeah.
Something like CRISPR blows on, and that's my excuse for getting superhumans. So you have these superhumans that are genetically mutated, and then you have the religious people that are against any sort of genetic mutation. But they'll do like cybernetics and like biohacking, but they have this religious thing against altering your DNA because it's not God given and playing God. So anyway, they have this city, and to support it for your mission, you get sent out to get like raw materials out into the world full of all these like superheroes left over, but they're living with no technology. It's like post-apocalyptic. They're like hunter-gatherers, but they're left over from this genetic revolution that ended the world, and all they have is like, and they're sci-fi. So like the church people are sci-fi. They have suits, and they get the gift of the Holy Ghost, which is nanomachines in their body. So at 8 years old, when they become part of it, and then the church, it's all a centralized system like Google or Facebook, real-time nanomachines reading out your biometrics, your emotional data, your whatever, and they can control it. Anyway, all this, like spend a lot of time thinking about shit like this. So that's a long way to say. That's a long introduction to say when I'm looking at your website, I'm like, this is so fucking dope because you're doing the same thing, just like a different. And what I wanted to point out is I really like the. I'm on, just so you know what artwork I'm talking about. Let me go back to portfolio. On the second one, so you have the three sisters is the first one, and then the second one, it looks like the same three sisters.
No, so that's Shaila in the orchestration of time. So they're second in the story. If verse 1, so I have each story quoted as verses, right? Because I want to do it set up like a religious text. So verse 1 was the creation story. Verse 1.5 is when Shaila, that woman, and the three people, they're representations of time. So after they created the universe, the three sisters, time was inconsistent, and it was the future was starting before the beginning, and the present never really existed. So the suns wouldn't set, and nothing could really start. So Shaila, frustrated with the timeline being inconsistent, she uses her powers to grasp it, to make it flow in one direction temporarily, right? Because time really isn't linear as we know it. But she controls the timeline and grabs it and allows time to flow, and the sun can set and the moon can rise and the oceans can go in and out. And so that's how we created the part of the creation story, is how people became to be, right? Because she's like the orchestrator of time. So that story itself is like a reflection of the three sisters. And so the woman in the middle represents the present time, and she's just a reminder to stay present, right? Because we can worry about the past, we can be nostalgic, and we can be concerned about our future, but if we're not paying attention to the present right now, right? Like, we're not really going to be happy. So the story is about like my interpretation of time and what's important to me. The present is fucking important to me, right? My dog is always in the present, constantly, 100% in the present. She is the most present being on this planet. So she reminds me as a human to stay present. So the idea is just like wrapped up. So I take all of these like cliches in mythology, creation story, the flood story, the apocalypse, the god of time, the god of love, the god of war, and I just put my interpretation into it. So that's my most recent painting, is the creation of time one.
So
and that's probably. Go ahead.
I was going to say, stylistically, the art style on this one, and then also Dream Sequence is another one that I've pulled up. I really like. I don't know how to explain it. The landscape, like what'd you call it? Like the geo formations of like the sandstone rocks.
Yeah,
that actually sticks out to me. Other than obviously, there's something about that style that reminds me a little bit of. It's like watercolor mixed with one of my favorite art styles, which is from the series Darksiders. I don't know if you ever played Darksiders.
Yeah.
So there's a little element of like the way like. I'm on this Dream Sequence one, the way it kind of like moves and it's morphing and with the shadowing, but it's not comic booky. It's like watercolor mixed.
It's illustrated.
I really like
stylized.
It. Yeah.
So you'll really like the Dream Sequence one. So in the story, Reed is about verse 6 or verse 7. Reed is on another dig site and he discovers a psychedelic compound inside of a necklace that has a vial in there, right? So, a lot of ancient religions would take soma, or they would take psychedelics to get in touch with their spirituality. So I wanted to introduce the idea of him taking psychedelics, because I definitely have not ever experimented with psychedelics in my whole life.
Nor should you, children.
Don't take drugs.
I don't believe you. I'll say it. I've done acid a bunch of times and shrooms a bunch of times and DMT.
Damn it.
They're pretty fun. I wouldn't say they're fun. They are something.
They're experimental. We'll just leave it at that. So I wanted to introduce the idea of him discovering his psychedelic compound, and he takes the fluid. He drinks this fluid, and he trips his balls off, and he wakes up in that dream sequence. So I'm going to do like 2 more of those paintings where he's tripping his balls off, but I wanted him to go on a journey of self-discovery inside of his psychedelic experience, where he actually discovers that he has divine blood in him. He's the 15th removed from the trickster god. So he discovers in this psychedelic trip who he really is, and that he has powers, and he starts developing his own powers based on manipulation of light. So my experience is taking psychedelics, which don't exist. I've discovered a lot about myself and about my personality and self-actualization as well. So I wanted him, Reed, who is essentially me in this whole story, to really become self-actualized after that trip. So he's going on his own journey, as I do, and I'm illustrating that. And then it goes on to the next story, and he's like, the university that he's working for is trying to discover old relics so they can take over the world and restart an ancient war, because they're trying to, it's sort of like the Germans tried to look for very ancient artifacts that gave them abilities and powers of mythology as famed. I don't know if that's really true, but the idea is the same. So he's working for them. Little does he know that they're assholes, and he's just going to fight them. So the story will continue after the 10th verse, which is where the book ends. And it's just like the story of my life wrapped up into art, wrapped up in all of the anime and all the video games I've ever played.
Is there a specific video game art style that you would apply as similar to your style? If you had explained, like I said, some of this reminds me a little bit, when I say a little bit, just a tiny bit of Darksiders, because Darksiders is very like Jim Lee comic book.
Yeah.
But there's an element of that in this. How would you describe your visual style?
So when I'm going to pull up my website so I can just look at everything. So when I am considering doing a piece of art, dude, most of the time I'm heavily influenced by Studio Ghibli, anything Miyazaki. I know my work doesn't really reflect that, but the style and the dramatic colors and the emotion, right? So when I come up with a painting, I want to portray a certain mood. I'm working right now on a painting on his rough title is The God of Depression, right? He is the stepbrother to the Sisters of Creation, and he lives in the underworld. But everybody has been depressed. Everybody's been so sad that they feel like they're under the ocean, right?
Yeah.
So when I look to make a new painting, I think about the mood and what is my experience with depression and anxiety. And then I typically look through Pinterest for a mood, a very specific mood. And I find a video game that reminds me of depression. So a lot of the darkness, a lot of like moody colors. And most of the time, Zelda usually covers all of the moods. They're very dramatic in their style, in their color choice, in the story behind it, right? Because Zelda and Link are always in like fucking turmoil. I mean, why don't they just fucking bang and get it over with? Because we need more games. That's why.
We need more games.
It's just blue balls for 30 years.
So it seems like you're referencing Zelda. I mean, that is your main game. I mean,
it's the moodiest game that I know about, right?
Yeah.
It's my connection to mood. It's my connection to storytelling. Like, Breath of the Wild was incredible.
Everyone keeps telling me that, and I got about 10 hours into it and just lost interest.
Dude, the more I played, the more interest I got. I would spend hours cooking meals, like hours and hours starting up a fire and throwing in random ingredients to see what I could get. I spent a lot of time on that game.
Yeah, people love
that
game. Have you ever seen a game called Ori and the Blind Forest?
No, but that sounds really familiar.
Look it up and just go to either images or watch a video. Some of your paintings remind me of this game.
Yes, dude. Yes, I've seen this stuff before on Pinterest, and the mood. Look at the mood in these paintings.
Dude,
you can feel the emotion.
This is one of the best as far as art direction and vision. It's also a great Metroidvania, which is probably my second, or maybe now as I'm older, first preferred style of game. I love 2D Metroidvania games. I play them all the time. And this is one of those.
Where can you play this?
You can play this, I believe, on Xbox,
on
PC,
Steam?
PS4. I don't know if it's on Switch.
Yeah, so I've seen this, and I have some of these paintings saved in my Pinterest. I use Pinterest for everything, but I have the mood in these paintings, and I see this kind of stuff. Look at the backgrounds in these 2D scrollers, right? Beautifully painted backgrounds, very long format. This sort of environment design is where my heart starts crying. I get so emotionally invested in the background art for 2D side scrollers. Like, look at this shit. Isn't that incredible? Think of the hundreds and thousands of people you're inspiring just by doing a fucking background painting. Like, landscapes are very close to my heart because there's so much mood and there's so much just feeling behind them.
Have you heard of Hollow Knight?
And Journey.
That might. Oh, Journey's amazing. They have they got a new, what is it? What's that team? I forget their name. This that first Sony first party that did Journey, and they did Flower. They have an artsy fartsy name, but they have a new game coming out that looks like Journey 2.0. I forget what it's called. That Journey's amazing. There's a kid. Todd Robbins was on. He's my first episode. Kuma Films guy. He had a really interesting story about Journey. I wonder if did you play Journey all the way through? No,
not the whole thing.
Okay, they had this amazing mechanic. So they built this beautiful world, and they have one of the best soundtracks, by the way. If you like video game music, you got to check out the soundtrack to Journey. But they had this interesting online mechanic where, like Dark Souls, you couldn't really play with someone, but someone could be in your world. And you could interact with them. You just have some preset emojis. Yeah. And there was the game you can play through multiple times and collect these scarf pieces, and a lot of them are hidden in like really hard places to find. And he said the very first time he played that game, it's a long game, like for a single playthrough. It's like a 5-hour playthrough. Yeah. In the very first area, someone joined his game that had the scarf completely maxed out, like they had mastered the game. Wow. And they led him through the whole game through a perfect playthrough and got him every single piece. And he said he was like, I wish I knew who that guy was. I would like to meet him because I like got teary-eyed when I beat the game. God. Because it's this emotional game, beautiful background, and this stranger over the internet like led him through this mythological world and gave him a perfect playthrough. And I just think that game is, as far as putting him, insane. It's insane. Yeah, you should try. Hollow Knight's another one that maybe you could get some inspiration from.
Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight. It's a little bit different. It's like I don't know how you explain the style. You might not like the characters, but the backgrounds are dude. Cool.
I see this guy everywhere.
Yeah, this game is badass.
I see this character drawn. Most of the artists that I follow draw at least one of these. Like, where can I play this, dude? I'm just gonna like Steam all of these.
I played Hollow Knight on Switch. Do you have a Switch? Oh, of course you do. You have Breath of the Wild.
No, I borrowed a Switch, so that's how I played. But I need to buy a Switch because everything's coming out on it that I want to play.
Yeah, if it's on Steam too. Like I have it both for Steam and Switch. That's how much I like that game.
Dude, it got a 10 out of 10 and 98%.
It's so good.
Shit, dude.
If you like those 2D platformer Metroidvania, you're gonna like this.
Hell yeah.
And it has a really cool lore. Like you're obviously into lore and world building. Did you ever play Dark Souls? That's one of the
Dark Souls?
Yeah.
No, I couldn't get past the first boss, dude.
Yeah. It is.
I was so bad at it.
It's a very hard game to get into.
Super hard.
But it has one of the best thought out worlds, and it delivers its lore in a very there's no storytelling, there's no cutscenes. You pick up the lore of the world from like finding pieces of paper and reading this and reading item descriptions, and everything's been thought out and architected out, kind of like your world. But they never push it on you. You have to figure it out on your own if you want. Or you can just play through the whole game and have no idea what's going on. Yeah. And some people do that.
Yeah.
That's how Hollow Knight is. When you play Hollow Knight, it's beautiful art style, great gameplay. If you want to get into the lore of the game, you can. And you just have to pay attention to everything. Read the descriptions of everything. Find all the secrets. And it
Dude, I've always been into that. Yeah. Speaking of lore that I really dug into, not Dragon Quest.
Legend of Dragoon?
No. Fuck, what was it?
What game? What is it? A game?
It was a RPG.
On
that's
which
really
console?
popular, and it's fantasy. Dragon.
It's probably there is a series called Dragon's Quest.
Dragon? No, it's not Quest. That's an old game. I know what you're thinking of.
Is it newer?
Yeah, it came out. The most recent one came out. Dragon Age. That's
Dragon Age. Yes.
Oh my God. Let me tell you
Inquisition.
about my obsession with Dragon Age.
Yes. Let's talk about. You were the first person to bring that game up, and I love that game. So let's talk about that game.
Oh my God. So I am a huge fan of fantasy RPGs that take more story than action. I got so involved with their characters and the game style. Like Dragon Age, I played hundreds of hours into each one. The second one was all right. It was just sort of repetitive. The first one was, God damn it, it was so incredible. The gameplay, the story, and the most recent one, number 3, I believe.
Inquisition. Yes, that's my favorite one.
Oh my God, it was so good. I was working for a company called Chrysalis, and I was a caretaker for the mentally disabled. But a lot of my job was sitting in the house that they lived in and like helping them like cook or clean, or I would give them their meds whenever they wanted. But there was tons of downtime. So when Dragon Age 3 came out, I played Dragon Age at work for $11 an hour for almost a month and a half. I played 6 hours per shift, probably 30 to 40 hours a week playing this game and getting paid for it. So I played every single mission, all the side missions. There was nothing for me to do. The last things I had to do was like the main quest stuff to finish the game. And I was like, I don't want to finish it. Oh, I did all the side stuff. I dumped my life into that game.
I'm a very when I get sucked into an open world game like that, I'm completionist as well. I do and that game in particular, the lore. I love the idea of how they had the initial political attack that started off, like the blowing up of that. The mages and the knights were all coming together. Yeah. There's a title screen, and when you hit start, the building blows up, and that's like the political event that starts the whole game.
Yeah.
And the lore of like the alternate dimension where all the magic comes from. And we have to talk about my favorite character was Solus, the elf.
Dude.
And then at the very end, it's been out for a long time. I don't want to spoil it, but the twist with him and who he ends up really being and how it connects to the whole world and the lore, I was like, that motherfucker. You were my favorite. Fuck. But I still love you, but I hate you.
I know. He was such a creative character too, man. I would always pick like, I played the game 1.5 times. The first time I played as a ranged archer, who was just like heavy DPS, and so I used who was the chick that was the tank?
Cassandra.
The
night
Cassandra?
chick?
Yeah,
short, dark hair.
She was my tank, and then I used Solus a lot for my secondary DPS / Wasn't he kind of a healer, or was he mostly DPS?
He was mostly DPS. Well, I can't remember how that game worked. I think you could get some overlap on like what you skilled. Maybe no. I'm getting it mixed up. I don't think you could heal. Who did heal in that game? I don't even remember.
There was a white wizard chick. She was just a white chick who was a wizard, and I think she could heal a little bit.
Yeah.
But at that time, like I just had a tank. I had me as a ranged DPS and then a secondary DPS, and there was nothing that they could do. I would destroy every monster I came to because I did all the side quests. I was so leveled up that we would just be so perfectly synced into each other. I had all my setups. Like if I attack this person, all of you guys attack. You can set up like what they really do. So I spent time into strategy and like all of the side things. So by the time I got through the game, I was just wrecking. Everyone.
And that's what I like about those games is like if you're going to do the due diligence of all the side quests and stuff, the reward is being so overpowered that you wreck everything. Like I earned this. I put all these hours in. That's how that game was. I liked the lore. I played as my main character. I did not the ranger, but the guy with the 2 knives, like the thief. The 2 short knives.
He had the hat, the big white hat.
Yeah, but I did the race of those big like demon horn guys.
Yeah.
I forgot. Like that game. Speaking of lore,
They were warriors. I can't remember.
yeah, that game had like they have all these different. It's like the idea of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. That's the OG, at least in my. I'm sure there's someone who's way into fantasy could name someone who did Tolkien before Tolkien. But for me, and then now you have all these other fantasy worlds, and I don't mind that it's like elves and it's similar concepts, but they put new and interesting twists on them. Did you ever play The Witcher 3? You have to play The Witcher 3 if you haven't.
I did play. I played about 30 hours into it, and I'm still not even close to finishing that game.
Yeah.
The graphics were incredible. The story, the battling was hard. It was just a hard game. I was really challenged by that. Typically, like, with Dragon Age, I just fucking wrecked, right? And I get into Witcher, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm kind of a bitch.
Dragon Age is more of a tactical, like, stat game. It's not a skill based. Witcher is a good mix between stats and skill. I want to talk a little bit about sci-fi because I know, for me, sci-fi is a little bit higher on the totem pole than fantasy.
Yeah. Can I take a break and go pee? I have to pee really bad.
Absolutely not.
If you just chit chat about something while I'm gone, I gotta pee.
I'll chit chat. We're gonna look at your website and talk shit on you. Anyway, so that's Chase. Obviously, we didn't talk a lot about video games, but that's fine because Homeboy is a legit motherfucking artist. If you haven't checked out his website yet, when you're listening, you can listen later. artofchasehenson.com. Look, I'm going to pull up, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to pull up some Darksiders shit because I think Darksiders has some of the coolest artwork, and there's some similarities between his artwork and Darksiders art. Let's type in art so I can actually see some art. Look at this. Darksiders is so dope. Let's get something with the Chart Council, WIP. Yeah, let's look at the Chart Council. Open image in new tab. And then come over here, Tree Spirit. I see some similarities. Maybe you guys don't. Some of the shading, the outlining, it's fantasy, but it's not like hyper realistic. Oh yeah, Joe Mad. He's the guy that did. Is he the guy that did all the Darksiders? Darksiders art director. It was some famous comic book artist. Yeah, Joe Mad Marduria. Oh, he's back.
All right. Yes, sci-fi.
Let's talk about some sci-fi.
I've got some games that really changed my life, dude.
Let's talk about I'm gonna bet because you played Dragon Age, you had to have gotten to Mass Effect.
Oh, anything BioWare. I think that's where they get you, right? Like BioWare. Let's just type in BioWare games because let's just talk about story building and world building, right?
Yeah, Mass Effect. Do you remember? So when Mass Effect, the game's kind of clunky, Mass Effect 1, if you go back and replay it.
Yeah.
But what stuck out to me is, one, the art direction of like the suits and the ships. I thought the characters were okay, but everything else, I loved the art direction. And
yeah.
Like, I'm a wannabe artist, so I'm like one level below you. Art direction is a big deal for me in the beginning, but they had what they called the Codex, which is in all the games now. But you could get as deep into that. I remember going in, clicking on the gun, and they had multiple entries on like how the technology of the gun worked, how the technology of the shields, and everything had been thought out. And I spent like my friends would come in, like roommates come in and be like, "This isn't even a game. All you're doing is reading shit. Every time I come in, you're just in the game reading something. Like, do you even play this game? You guys don't get it. This is like a full-on fucking book that's badass, but it's in the game, and you play it."
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Yep.
Everything was thought out. Like, I remember that, and it was all built around the technology of Mass Effect, which was the manipulating. I forgot how it worked. Like, the guns wouldn't actually. The reason you had infinite ammo on a lot of guns, like the pistol, is it used like heat, and it would break off chunks of a slab, and it would accelerate it like a mini Mass Effect drive. Yeah. And then the Mass Effect drive was how the shields work, and they explained why, like, you could melee through shields, but not bullets, because shields worked on a velocity. That way you could have your shield up and someone could come and shake your hand because your hand's not moving at a certain velocity, but it would work off like velocity. They had everything fleshed out.
Everything. Armor, game, like armor, the weapons, every aspect, they're like, yeah, you got to create a backstory to it. You can imagine being on that design team. Holy fuck. I mean, how many years did it take in between games? The first one came out, and the ratings were incredible. I remember when the first one came out, and it was everywhere, dude. Everywhere. So I'm looking at...
Mass Effect was released...
Mass Effect 1.
2007.
Oh, there was 4 games. 3, and then
you
Andromeda.
Haven't played Andromeda. Andromeda, people hate.
Oh, I didn't like it. I played it.
The best battle system of all the games, the worst everything else. But the battle system was amazing.
Yeah, they really fine-tuned that. I think Mass Effect 2 was easily my favorite. Mass Effect 3 was good. Mass Effect 2 was just, oh, God. And the same with Dragon Age, right? The same sort of battle style where you might be a short-range shotgun guy with tons of health, and then you had a long-range guy, and then you had a sniper on your team. You know, you get to decide what your strategy format is: tank, healer, long range, whatever you're doing. So I was typically like, I think in number 2 I was a short range. I remember having shotguns and a lot of biotech stuff, so I could float them in the air and blast them with a shotgun. I would just move in real close, and then I had a sniper and a mid-range guy with all kinds of stuff. But I remember actually when I was in my oil painting class in college, and one of our assignments was to paint a character. Just paint a character. There was the open assignment. I picked Rex from Mass Effect and painted him. I don't even have an image of him. I might somewhere in this room.
He's the Krogan, yeah.
Hold on, let me find Rex. I have him right here.
And for those who are listening, the Krogans are like these battle-hardened, survive everywhere.
So, right here, Rex.
Oh,
see that?
Nice. There he is.
This was one of my first oil paintings that I did 7 years ago for my intro to oil painting class. And he was like one of my first characters that turned out good for that time. I look at it now and I just want to punch myself in the balls, but
that's how being an artist works.
that's how influential the game was. At that time I was playing probably number 3. Andromeda was a little after that. Yeah, it was probably number 3. Either way, like that game alone, just the technology and just like you can pretty much do anything, right? You can just create tech. It's fantasy, but there's science behind it, and that's really interesting because there's some backing to it.
What they do is they take some legitimate science and sort of extrapolate it, but it's based in a little bit of reality, which makes it so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think Mass Effect, as far as, I mean, I played a little bit of Halo, so like number 1 and number 2 were cool. I was never super into that.
I think you're actually your guest number. I don't know if chronologically you'll be number 11 to 12 uploaded, but you're the first one that didn't talk a lot about Halo. Halo is like this huge cultural phenomena. I had a kid from the UK, he's an artist, does like lowbrow, like political satire, like Rick and Morty type art. And Halo for him was massive over in the UK. Like everyone brings up Halo, and you're the first person to sort of like, I played a little bit of it, not a big deal.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was a fun game, right? But I never got sucked up into the lore of it. Halo was just, I actually remember the first one coming out I was working for my dad as a carpenter. In his shop, he had a computer that had preloaded Halo 1. And this is probably when Halo 2 was out, so Halo 1 was readily available for everyone.
Yeah.
But Halo 1 was it was a trial on his computer. And while he was gone, I would play Halo 1 when I should be doing like carpentry stuff, like helping my dad in his small business. But I'm fucking playing Halo 1. So I guess it sort of had an impact, but I was just using it as a means of avoiding
carpentry work.
Real life. And I'm trying to think what are the sci-fi games that I really play. Portals 2. I played that. That was fucking. I love puzzle games. as an artist, most artists really enjoy puzzle games. We really like to figure out systems and how the process works.
Yeah.
So puzzle games are huge for artists. I'm pretty confident in that. So Portals 2 was like, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
Did you play like Puzzle Fighter? Street Fighter Puzzle Fighter? That's the only
never.
puzzle game I've ever got into.
Yeah, I played. I'm scrolling through games right now. This is a lot of fun, dude. Gears of War. I played a little bit of that. That was fun. It just felt like another third-person shooter to me, though.
When I first saw Gears of War, it blew me away because it was at the time 360. It was an early 360 style, so graphically it was a big jump. And
yeah, for the first one.
Me away, yeah.
So another game. Before I started doing art, before I started doing anything creative, man, I look back at this time with like with a mixture of distaste and nostalgia and like love for World of Warcraft. I played.
Yes.
I played.
Yes.
Listen.
Yes.
I played World of Warcraft for about a year and a half, solid, at about 7 to 8 hours every single day. I can guarantee you there was probably a couple days off, but I played very consistently 6 to 8 hours every day for a year and a half. This was during the first Obama election. I remember it just happening at the same time and us talking about it in the chat like we all knew what we were talking about. I would raid. I would do the battle stuff, like the PvP stuff. I played that game every single day, and I got nothing from it. I've never played a game longer than I did World of Warcraft. For a solid year, I probably put in 5,000 hours. I had to have. There was so much time invested into World of Warcraft. And it was right before the Wrath of the Lich King came out. And then I played a little bit of Lich King. And that's when I quit. I was playing way too much, and it got really repetitive. And it was a lot. I would do the raids, like 30 people raids, 25 people raids. I would be in raiding guilds. I would be on Discord with everyone, and we all coordinated these fucking massive dungeons together. Oh, God. Fucking Blizzard, man. They really fucked me up. They did it with Overwatch, too. It was first-person shooter, basically World of Warcraft. You have healers and DPS and tanks, like, same format. Same craziness of Blizzard. Oh, I invested so much time. I still have friends today that I made from World of Warcraft that I'm friends with on Facebook, and I've been following their life for the past 15 years.
That's a good thing. So you got that's one semi-positive thing, or positive thing for sure, that you got out of it.
Yeah, so at the time I was playing with these people that were literally my friends that I'd never met in my life. And then on the weekends, I would party so goddamn hard with my real life friends, right? So I would spend 6 days a week playing World of Warcraft, working part-time at a dry cleaners on the east side of Provo. And then on the weekends, partying with my friends, doing the dumbest shit you could possibly do for years and years. And it was just like a blur. It was just like, it was a lot of wasting time, a lot of avoidance.
I have a similar, I think, kind of around time. I'm trying to think. I met you at the Smash tournament, which means I was living with my buddy Todd, who came to that Smash tournament. And shortly after, like, we stayed in touch online. I see you at the gym. I sold alarms door to door. I made a bunch of money my first year, and I came home. I didn't work for 2 years because I think I made like 50-something, 48, somewhere around 50K that summer. And I came in and I rented a house, which is now torn down, in the south end of Orem, right as it goes down. The State Street goes down the hill and turns into Fifth West.
Yeah.
There was a house. It was the A-frame house. It was like a log cabin type house. Did you ever come over to a party there? I think you did because we threw a lot. I don't know. I probably invited you. I have vague memory, but anyway, I paid for the place for a year in advance with the homie, and then we just rented out the rooms, and then I paid for it again like the next year. And I lived there for about 2 years total. I left a little bit early. Similar thing where I wasn't done with college. It's like halfway through college, but I made all this money. I did nothing. I didn't play World of Warcraft, but what I did do is every morning, without fail, minus one day a week, the weather was bad, especially in the summer, I'd wake up pretty late because I stayed up late the night before, and I would suntan and read comic books and drink like Diet Dr. Shasta in the backyard and smoke weed. Smoke weed, read comic books in the backyard. I had nothing to do. I had all this money. Like I said, I didn't really get anything from this time because I accomplished absolutely nothing for 2 years.
That sounds amazing.
But I fucking read a lot of dope comic books, and I don't know. Have you ever heard of a series called The Preacher?
Yeah, I've been watching the show, and I read the graphic novel.
Yeah, so I went through all like 9 preachers or whatever. Same thing. Like I look back at that time, kind of like you fucking dumbass. Like you did nothing. But the flip side, I also had a great time.
It was great,
and it's a little blurry because the same thing.
I don't regret my year and a half of Warcraft and getting smashed with my friends on the weekends like that.
It's part of growing up. I think
it's a part of being who we are, right? Yeah. You wouldn't be who you are without all of those comic books. I wouldn't be who I am without all of the avoidance and the technology and the games and the art and the psychedelics. Like experimenting and experiencing life is how you build personality. If it's nature and nurture that develop you as a person, then all of the nature that you put yourself into, all of the experiences that you do, right, it could turn out bad. We could have been in a rehab together. We could have been like old rehab buddies who were sober for 9 months and then got back on the heroin and then moved on, right? But eventually it turned us onto games, into entertainment, into things that are at least productive for the most part, depending on your viewpoint of what's productive. Art and entertainment stuff usually isn't considered a career path for most people, but as us as creatives, like this is our lifeblood. This is what we do. We have to watch movies. We have to play video games.
That's what inspires you.
We have to follow story, and I think story is the biggest thing amongst all gamers. Any gamer watching this, any of you out there who are watching this, if you play games, if you make art, if you fucking watch movies, you are consuming someone else's mind. Like the shit that came out of their fucking head, and then it moves into this creative cloud that we all work on together, right? I've always felt like creativity is this massive cloud that we all download from. Like all of our creative consciousness in this giant cloud above us, right? I've seen something from a sci-fi movie and I draw from that and put it into my art. Creativity doesn't exist in this nebulous random area. We're all drawing from the same inspirations and nothing's really original anymore, right?
I was just going to say, have you ever seen the documentary series called Everything's a Remix?
Yes.
It's the same idea. Like there's more finite, what's the word? Everybody's using the same ingredients, but they might split them up and mix them different. But there's really, I remember making this joke, which I've seen. I think I was the originator of this joke. Probably not. Probably parallel thinking. So. But
I believe in you.
Early on in making music, like you said with art, nobody believes in you. I was like, I'm going to start making. I was playing drums in like metal prog bands. It's like, fuck this. The band is hard. I'm going to make beats. And I heard a guy named Polish Ambassador making these really dorky video game funk beats. And I went to a show and he sold out this whole club in Park City, and he was making a full-time living. Kind of like you with concept art. I was really like, I met a dude who I liked his music. I hung out with him backstage. He's like, yeah, I've been doing this for a few years, and now I tour and I pay my bills doing music. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do that now. And same thing with avoidance. I was selling alarms in St. Louis door to door, and a friend was giving me a lot of those door to door guys abuse Adderall to like get out there and work.
So that's how you make it.
That's how you make it. Well, I got a hold of some Adderall from some dudes there, and instead of going out and working, I pirated Ableton Live music, and I taught myself how to, I worked just enough to make enough money to get by because my 2 years had run out from my first summer. This is like my fourth summer. I figured out how much do I need to pay for rent and for tuition and everything. Once I had sold enough alarms to do that, you couldn't leave early, because if you leave early in these summer programs, they take your back and you don't get all your money.
Yeah.
So I had to work a little bit just to not like get kicked out, basically. But all my free time was just, I'm going to learn how to make music. And nobody believes in you. And like everyone's just like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, you were doing that Damn Son stuff for a while, right?
For a long time, like 5 years, 6 years, something like that.
Yeah, I don't actually know what that was. Was it a clothing design company or music, or what were you guys doing?
Spoiler alert, neither did we, which is why nobody else knows what it was. It started out as a record label, and then became like a lifestyle brand and clothing, and my partner, who's actually now, he's been on the podcast, Omar, that I started that with. It was his brainchild. He brought me on. He is now the social media manager for K-Swiss. He's like over all their social media. So he's like kind of, Damson's still there. It's still growing, but no one's really putting any work into it. It's really just a lifestyle brand now. There's no music releases or anything. It transitioned to a lifestyle brand. But yes, you nailed the problem with this. Why I think it didn't. Well, it did work out. That's the thing. You've been at art for 10 years. I think people have this expectation. They don't understand, going full circle, how long 10,000 hours is. They don't understand what the price really is to pay. So what ends up happening, what I did with music is I got 5-6 years in, maybe 5,000 hours, and I had made a lot of progress with music compared to a lot of my peers, and I was making money, but not enough. Yeah. And eventually I was like, well, I stopped, because I had this expectation, well, if I was doing it right, if I had the right type of music, if I had the skills, I would have made it already, which is not the way to think now in hindsight.
No. No.
Not the way to think.
That's not how it works at all. Oh, my God.
So you should keep doing it, by the way. You should not stop doing art, because eventually it'll stack. All your work is going to stack eventually to some point.
It's long term.
Yeah.
Anything creative is always long term, right? And I know I can fuck. It took me a long time to figure out that art isn't a short-term gains, and anything worthwhile isn't short-term. Anything short-term isn't worthwhile. I should say it that way, right? You can make quick money buying and selling old antique shit on eBay, right? In a year's time, you can find some old shit, sell some new shit, whatever. You can make money very quickly. Art is a very, very long-term process, and it is not for everyone. Art as a profession, I should say, art as a hobby is for everyone. I think everybody should be creative in their own way, whether it's storytelling or music or clothing design or fucking playing drums. I play in a band. I make zero money from that. Literally, I spend more money playing drums than I do from my gigs that I play. We've actually got a show on the 16th coming up at Bill Harris Music. It's a Friday, so
isn't that Spanish Fork, Springville, right? This sounds
Bill Harris is in Provo on 300.
It's the big glass windows. I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
the big one on 300 South and University Avenue.
What's
in
your
Provo.
band called?
Mome Wrath, MOMEWRATH. Mome Wrath. It's from the Alice in Wonderland poem Mome Wraths.
Check out your Facebook. Mome Wrath.
Yeah, look up Mome Wrath on Facebook. We got a show coming up on the 16th at Bill Harris Music in Provo. So if y'all are into that, fucking show up. Dude, I would love to see you there. It has been 15 years since you came to our first show. I would love to see...
Is it the same band?
No.
Okay.
No. But I would love to see the progress. The last time you saw me play, I was probably shitting all over myself. I was so bad. But I've progressed a lot in that sense. It's more of a hobby for me, actually, music. But anyway, regardless, where was I going with that rant?
16th of August, right?
Yeah, 16th of August, which is a Friday. So not this weekend, but the next weekend, the 16th, at Bill Harris.
Is there a Facebook event? Because I can't find it.
We're going to make one soon.
Make one and send it to me, and then I'll go to my calendar, and then I'll probably end up showing up. Yeah. So anything creative is long term. If any of you out there are wanting to get into art,
don't get into art because you want to make a living. Get into art because you fucking love it. And art is music. Art is video games. Art is writing. All of it is art. Art is a very general term for anything creative that doesn't involve going to a fucking call center and working 18 hours a day. Like, we all have to work shitty jobs. All of us. Just be creative in your free time, right? I don't know where I was going with this rant, but
I started ranting too, and then I forgot, and I was like, well, maybe he'll remember and bring us back around full circle. But
I'm a tiny bit drunk, so my rants are just going off. I get super passionate, dude. This is what I spend my entire all of my mental energy. I'm at work, so I work at a treatment center for teens with learning disabilities, ADD, ADHD. It's sort of like a therapeutic residential treatment center. And they're transitioning out of like a wilderness program into this program. And then we push them into college or jobs, whatever they're trying to do. Anyway, when I'm at work, when I'm with these kids, all I talk about is art and how it inspires me. All I think about is the next painting I'm going to work on. What's the next story in my mythology that I want to create that involves, well, that will just progress the story in general. I've got a creation story. I've got an apocalypse story. I've got a flood story. I've got, I'm sure there's a starvation story that I'm missing. There's the god of depression that I'm working on. It's just like, how do I interject my own life into my own art and still make it marketable at the same time? Right? I could make all kinds of art.
Yeah.
It's fucking hard. How do you make music as a drummer that is good enough for people to show up at a venue to see you play? You were doing some like electronic stuff mixed in with your drumming back in the day, a couple years ago. How do you get people to connect with that, right? How do you interject your own personal experiences into a creative, physical, or auditory medium? That's insane. The insanity of that is just fucking mind-blowing.
I think that if I was to give myself advice now in hindsight, is you do have to figure out how to make it marketable, but I think that's second tier. I think what you should do first is have it be something that it has to be music that you legitimately like. A lot of my songs are super nerdy. Some people like them. The most important thing is when I finish a song, I will like jam it out and get off on my own song. If someone else made this, I would be, because there are other people that make similar. And like, I have weird tastes. A lot of people that are my favorite artists, other people are like, they're okay. But to me, it's creme de la creme. It's the cream.
Yeah.
It's the cream of the crop, baby.
It's got to be good.
And so if I can get off on my own song, I'm like, okay, that's step one. Step two is to kind of get it out there in front of the right eyeballs. And then secondary, be like, okay, I know I've hit it where it's emotionally honest, or it's creatively honest. It's something that I really like.
Yeah.
Now let's go over through with a filter and maybe try to make it more accessible. Maybe shorten this spot. Maybe tighten this up here. Because if you're not a hardcore into this style like I am, you're not going to appreciate that. And like, maybe let's try to... But the core is first... creative honesty, what you really like, what you want to express. Whereas in the beginning, I spent a lot of time like, I need to make a song like this, and you're not really, you learn good skills, but it's not really the right way to go about it.
Right. So let's talk about creative honesty for a second, right? If video games and all of the things that we're talking about build up to who we are now, what is creative honesty? Dig into your past. What are the things that inspire you the most? Why do you like those things? What are the connecting things between Zelda, between BioWare games, between fantasy, between concept art? For me, right, it was story. It was an exaggeration of color, my visual senses. Like, I was really attracted to very saturated colors and punchy contrast and really dramatic ideas and things that just didn't exist. So you dig into your past. What are the things, what are the connecting things between all of these mediums that you really, really enjoy? And how do you work that into your own art, into your own music? And that takes a lot of self-actualization, self-discovery. And for me, it took, I actually had to leave the country and drive to Canada in 2016. So I had a tattoo apprenticeship in Salt Lake.
I remember that. I ran into you at the gym, and you started doing tattoos.
Yes. Oh my God, I remember that exact conversation.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, right? Because this is a moment of self-discovery that fucking ruined me and saved me at the same time. So I was in school to be an artist. I was at UVU, and I was approached by one of my professors who was working at a tattoo shop once a month to teach them painting classes. One of the best artists in the state, who I will not name because he doesn't deserve that, wanted an apprentice. And so he talked to my professor, and my professor thought of me immediately because I was one of the only people who were tattooed. I was one of the only people who thought was like counterculture-ish, who would fit into that genre. So I applied for the apprenticeship. I sent in my portfolio. I got in. I was so excited. I was beyond excited. And this is one of those crushing moments where, as an artist, you either quit or you just move on, right? I was so fucking excited because I always collected tattoos. I was more of a receiver, a collector of them. So I got this apprenticeship at the best shop in the state with one of the best artists in the state.
21? I've heard that's the best shop.
I'm not even going to name names because I don't want to even involve
I'm just saying,
them.
okay, if I want a tattoo, I was told to go to 21. Should I go there?
There's some good artists there, and there's some good artists at Big Deluxe.
Big Deluxe?
Big Deluxe in Salt Lake as well.
Okay. Anyway,
but there's a couple. There's a couple, like, every shop has like one really good one, but 21 has some really good ones, and there's some other ones. But I'm not going to name names because I don't feel like they deserve this.
Okay.
Well,
don't worry about it. I have a video game tattoo. I have 3 tattoo ideas that I've been sitting on it for a long time. My wife wants me to get a tattoo. She's like, you just need to do it. Stop being a bitch. Go get a tattoo.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I have a friend that had a really cool tattoo idea that the tattoo like kind of got messed up originally. Then he had someone else try to fix it, and now he's just got this like blob on his arm, and I'm terrified of that happening. Yeah. So I'm like,
don't pay cheap. You'll be fine. Go to 21. You won't regret it. I promise you. They have good artists there. Anyway, so I actually have a Legend of Zelda tattoo on my arm. I have the Triforce Eagle from the shield on my arm right now. My whole forearm. Anyway, long story. Like that's a whole nother deal. So I thought that this apprenticeship was my in. That as an artist, I was going to make lots and lots of money because they charge $120 to almost $200 an hour as a tattoo artist. And the guy who I was working for was working 6 to 8 hours a day at $150 an hour.
So he's
8 hours, 6 days a week sometimes at $150. He was pulling in like $12,000 to $15,000 a month. Like it really depended, it'd come and go. Depending on his, but he had a very consistent client base. So that's an insane amount of money. Imagine working your full-time job at $150 an hour instead of whatever you're making now. Like I have no idea what you're making, but imagine $150 an hour at any job doing anything. That's fucking insanity. That's like $300,000 a year. If you work that consistently, whatever that is, that number's off. I just made that up because it sounds dramatic.
Let's see. If you're doing 10,000 a month is 120,000 a year because that's easy 12 months.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's a lot of fucking money. So I was set, right? So I went through this apprenticeship for 6 months, working free labor, 6 days a week, 7 to 8 hours a day. I would drive to Salt Lake twice a day. Well, there and back, 6 days a week, working for free during this apprenticeship. Eventually, I just got so burnt out and exhausted, and I hated the industry, and I hated the art, and I just I didn't know at the time that I really hated it until he fired me. He just cut me off. He was just like, you haven't been showing up, you've been doing this, you've been doing that, you're done. I'm sorry. That's it. And I was like, crushed. And I was like, fuck him, fuck you, fuck the industry. Really, it was my fault. I just wasn't really into it as I thought I was.
To make yourself into it, but you weren't.
Right. I was all dewy-eyed from how much money everybody was making and what the genre was, right? So I was crushed. It was like May of 2016. It was around my birthday. It was right after my birthday, actually. And I was crushed. I thought I was done making art. I thought I was done creatively. Like I was ready to quit. And there was this workshop called Legendeer. And it's put on by these illustrators who go to different national parks throughout the world. Like one time they went to Yellowstone. The other time, the one that I went to was in Banff, which is in Canada, which is the most epic national park. Like a fantasy landscape, mountains that are just fucking mind-blowing. You know what I mean? Just like these crazy spots. So they go on these week-long camps, and then at the end of it is like a 3-day workshop, and they really dig into you as an artist. Like, why are you interested in color? Why are you interested in art? Why did you start doing art? And they really, really fucking dug into your history. And they started this workshop with one of the Native Americans of Canada. They were called the First Peoples Nation. They started with like a prayer and then some poetry, and then it was like this really, really very hippie like intro into like cracking you open emotionally, right? And then really digging into who you are as an artist. So it took one of those to get into creative honesty. So speaking of like this really long rant, I had to go through
that's
tragedy.
What it was. Creative honesty. That's what started this. Yes.
I had to go through tragedy. I had to go through excitement. I had to go through just being crushed within a year's time to get to creative honesty, to figure out why the fuck am I interested in art? Really, it came down to story. It came down to like beings with powers, people who are super powered, like gods who have the ability to create planets, and just my atheism and my religious background and everything involved. So if we're talking about creative honesty, start a fucking journal. Write down the things that what really draw you to art, who your favorite artists are, and find the connecting parts. And then how do you take that and mix it into the fundamentals of whatever medium you're working in? Is it music? You got to figure out tempo. You got to figure out key. You got to figure out fucking, you know more than I'm a drummer. I'm not really a musician. I just hit things with sticks.
Hey. I don't mind that. But
you're more of a musician than I am.
There might be some drummers out there that, hey, we're musicians too, all right? Come on.
Right? Why do you listen to certain bands? What is it about this band and this band that are connected, right? Figure out what you're fucking interested in and draw those fundamental things out of it and mix it into your own style. Just create your own shit. Who cares? If you suck, you suck. You're going to get better.
You're going to suck. Just fail. No one is good when they start. No one is good for a long time.
No.
For a long, long time.
Every single one of your favorite artists sucked worse than you did at some point. I guarantee it.
Dude, I saw a quote that people pass around amongst creatives, artists, and musicians. It was like, you get into some type of art, whether it's music, illustration, writing, because you have good taste. There's certain things that you like a lot, and you have in your mind like, that's how I am. Would be really awesome if I took an element of this style, an element of this style, and combined them this way. In your mind, you can hear or see something like, that would be dope. But you don't have the skills to actually take that idea and execute it and manifest it into reality.
Yeah.
So when you first start,
video.
When you first start, your skills are so rudimentary that you don't even come close to what you have in your head. And then as you get better, you actually can manifest it. And then sometimes the idea you start with, because your skills are good, they'll take you somewhere else. And then you end up with something you weren't even thinking. And those can be some of my best songs that I've done at least the best with play counts. Have been songs that I made in it's always the ones that are fast.
Yeah.
It's one sit down, and then my best song was. It's at it's only because it was on this big YouTube video, but it's at close to 1 million plays. None of my songs are even close to that. But that song was me avoiding knocking doors, taking Adderall, and I put it together in 5 hours. And it was just but that's because I had spent years developing the skills for that to happen.
Right. The fundamentals of the medium.
Yes.
And that is the most important thing we can drive home. You can be an artist without understanding what value and color and composition and anatomy and whatever, any of that is. but it's going to be hit and miss. If you understand the fundamentals of music, of art, you'll better understand how to push the mood that you're trying to go for. Right?
Yep.
So I steal things from my favorite games, my favorite movies, my favorite ideas, but I'm understanding the fundamentals of why that movie is so impactful on me. I understand that now, and that's how I push that into my own work. And then eventually technique and skill will layer on top of that. You just have to keep doing it. You'll make a song that's like your breakthrough, or you'll do a painting that's like your milestone piece. It's the best piece you've ever done and the most dramatic piece of music you've ever made. And then everything after that is like kind of peters off, right? It goes across the map. Yep. And then you'll learn something new and it'll shoot you up. And it's all these small plateaus of progress. And it's never just like, he's just gifted. It's just your God-given talent. That fucking drives me crazy, by the way. There's no such thing as talent. It's time and effort equals skill.
I slightly disagree.
No, time times effort equals skill, and then it's from there.
But there are people, because when I was actually selling alarms and it wasn't the right fit for me, I could motivate myself to make enough money for school, but I could never get myself to be one of the big hitters. I could go out and sell, my best day is 4. If you sell 4 every day, you're making like $500K at the end of the summer. But I couldn't do it every day. I could sell 3 or 4 when I really wanted to, and then I wouldn't work for a week because I hated it. And I had this, the manager said this really good thing. It's like, look, you have some natural ability to do this. I'm saying the playing field isn't easy, right? There are people that can learn things quicker or have more of a natural knack. They always say hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But if you have a natural affinity and you work your ass off, that's how you get the best of the best. And so it's important, I think, for you when you decide to go all in on something, don't go all in on something that you know you are like kind of don't have a knack for. Like I wanted to be a pro snowboarder. I grew up snowboarding. I'd always get good grades, so I get a pass to the canyons, whatever, for like $200 as a junior high kid.
Yeah.
But I suck at doing anything gymnastic, like inverted. And like I would have friends that were good at it, and so I would see like, okay, we're both the same age, both like pretty much the same, but we try a new trick, like say this rail or say this pipe trick. I will have to try it 100 times before I can stick it. They have to try it 5 times. There's some sort of talent going on there.
There's something to say about natural inclination, a natural understanding of what you're trying to do, right? When you just naturally draw towards basketball, you might be better, right? But it still takes time.
Yes.
Times effort equals talent. And that's it, right? You might start at a different place. Like I started at the fucking bottom.
Yeah.
The absolute bottom. And time times effort. And I got higher than most of the people in my class and most of the people around me. Like I progressed super, super, super fast. But for me, I never felt like there was a natural inclination to art. I learned it. It was a learned through time and effort that I understood the fundamentals so thoroughly. And still are learning. I'm not saying I'm on the top of understanding. That sounds really pretentious. But I learn fast. And maybe that's the trick, right? Some people know how to learn better than others.
I think that's also is really talent comes down to. I've had the same conversation with some other friends. It's not necessarily talent like, oh, you're really naturally talented at this. I break it down into like 2. There's physical learning. Like, are you good? Do you have a good connection to your body and coordination? Do you know how to learn how to move your body and develop those pathways to do things that are awkward? Whether it's like gymnastics, tricking on a skateboard. Skateboards are really awkward balance. It's really nothing like walking, right? Or you have more creative skill-based, whether it's math, anything. Like learning how to learn and knowing what type of learning you're good at. I would wager, even though you didn't play with art at all until you had this moment, like, I'm going to be a concept artist, I bet that you probably have some sort of a natural talent because you might have been crushed in the beginning. Like, you have to the fact that you learned fast means you like it. You like what you're good at. So you learn fast, you see progress, so then you're motivated to go to learn even more. And it spirals on itself. And I think that maybe if you would have put in, let's say you were just super shitty. Like for some reason you had bad dexterity in your fingers and you had bad muscles in your wrists, and you put a year into art and you got nowhere. Like you got a tiny bit better. You probably would have given up because it's like, this is not. You know what I mean? So the reason I'm saying this is like, if someone's out there listening thinking like, I want to get into something, this is what that manager told me. It's like, you need to find something that you have an affinity for, that you like, that you actually can pick up, and that will eventually make you money. When those three things intersect. So like, no matter what, like if I said, I'm going to work all day, every day, become the best basketball player in the world, I'm never going to make it in the NBA. I'm 5'7". I'm 35 years old. Doesn't matter how much work I do. I'm not going to make it to the fucking NBA. Now, the good thing about creative stuff is there is no physical limitations, unless maybe like your eyes went out or something.
Well, some hand and eye coordination, but art is so easily interpreted. There's so many loopholes in art. You could be a quadriplegic and make good art. You know what I mean? Like, there are ways around it, but you generally have to have good hand-eye coordination to do.
Which video games helps with.
Yeah, exactly. That fine-tuning to bring it all back, right? All of these video games that we played, starting with Mario as a fucking side-scroller, up and down, left, right, and like 3 buttons sometimes. The Sega had 3 buttons, 4 buttons, and then the D-pad. And now we're playing games like Gears of War, or we're playing super complex Mass Effect, where we got 2 trigger fingers, we got 6 buttons on the right side, 2 kinds of sticks on the left side. Just complex gaming, in the moment decisions, right? You're playing Overwatch. I don't know if you've ever played Overwatch,
I haven't, but people love that game.
It's incredibly chaotic, and you're making moments split second. You're making decisions split second. You're having to like readjust your strategy, backing out, rethinking. There's a lot of like real world application, and actually the Army and the Navy, well, the military in general, is going to gaming to recruit new people because of those decision making processes, the way that they think in the moment really quickly. I was at Salt Lake Gaming Con last month, and they had the Army had an entire diesel truck bed gaming. It was like a gaming setup, right? And inside of a truck bed of a diesel truck, like a really long trailer.
Yeah,
and they had a gaming setup inside of it, and the Army was like walking around, and they're like talking to people, and they're recruiting gamers, like the people who are not the most masculine people, but the people who are quick to make decisions, quick to their fine-tuned motor skills, whatever. That's the future of like the military, which is fucking weird.
That is weird. I mean, I guess if I was like head of the military and I was building a drone army.
You want gamers.
I want gamers, yeah.
Because they're introduced to so many different interfaces in every single game that they play, whether it's a flying game or a driving game or an RPG. You have to use a different interface for drawing weapons, for using potions, for using like equipment. You want somebody who can fly a drone, who's used to random systems, right? The complexity of like flying a fucking jet or driving a car remotely. Anyway, super interesting. So gaming is like, I don't know if you saw this, but the winner of the Fortnite competition, did you hear about this?
He won like 3 million, something stupid amount.
3 million. He's 16 fucking years old. Won $3 million, but the government took 1.5 million from him in taxes. They took half of his money.
Wow.
But as a 16-year-old making 1.5 million in about 24 hours, Jesus Christ.
Well, you could look at it that way, or if you count all the hours he played to get that good at Fortnite.
It doesn't matter if it took him 3 years. He's still making a lot of money
per hour. Yeah.
If it took him 3 years to get good at it, he still made 1.5 million, more than most people make in their entire life. Dude,
yeah,
in their fucking life.
How many hours of Fortnite do you think he plays?
Every day. He probably doesn't have a lot of friends. He plays every night. He has friends that play with him. He probably has been playing since the game came out. and just had a natural affinity for it. He understood the game better than other people and won a fucking tournament. But that's the thing with like professional gaming. Games go out of style eventually. It's not like basketball or football or soccer.
Yeah. That's a good
They
point.
die out.
You have to get good at another game once that game has run its course. Yeah.
You have to be quick. And you probably won't make it to another pro game, right? Because you're good at Overwatch doesn't mean you're good at like League of Legends. Yeah, but professional gaming is really interesting. It's very quick. It's hot in the pan. It's like
I had a guy on like 2 episodes ago that's like mid-tier, not quite world-class level, but he's pretty far up in the fighting game world, specifically Street Fighter. And he was just talking about the skill gap between someone like him who he plays. I mean, he has his day job and a wife, and then it's Street Fighter. That's it. That's his main. Wow. That's all he does. And he won Salt Lake Gaming Con, actually. He
really?
won that tournament, yeah. He came on.
Like, they had a lot of tournaments that weekend.
And he was talking about the guys that are at the highest level. Like we were saying, professional gaming, especially with fighting games don't have as big of a player base as Fortnite does. Everyone and their dog is fucking playing Fortnite.
I fucking hate Fortnite.
Fighting games, even the guys at the very top level, if they're winning tournaments, he said some of them, they make decent money from tournaments, but they're not making that much money. It's the people that can win the tournaments, even if they're not the best in the world, but have a good way of having a personality online to draw sponsorships.
Twitch.
Then they can make good money.
Yeah.
But even if you're the best in the world and you're winning on the fighting game tournaments, it's really not like you'll survive, but you're
it's not consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of people streaming on Twitch and making money because of their personality. They're basically YouTube stars for the gaming industry.
Yes.
So they play Fortnite or they play the newest game coming out and they give reviews. They just like I don't know if it's definitely not millennials. It's the generation of boomers who are watching people play games and not actually playing games and making these Twitch streamers, these YouTube stars like super famous. And they're making money just from playing games. People watch.
I know. That's always blown my mind. But I remember going over to a friend's house, and there was my kids. Oh, well, speaking of my kids, I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old. They have watched all of the Kingdom Hearts 1, Birth by Sleep. There's someone that put together like this mega edit of all the cutscenes and gameplay in between them of all the Kingdom Hearts games.
Oh
it's like
God.
a 30-hour YouTube video, and they just slowly over the course of like months. Like, watch this whole YouTube video. And my kid knows. She's like, oh, that's Master Xenoheart. He's the bad guy. I'm like, I don't even know who that fucking is. And I've played most of those games. That's so-and-so. And, like, she likes watching it. And she'll watch the gameplay. And to me, that makes no sense. I'll watch the cutscene, then it gets to gameplay. I'm like, wow, does not capture my attention in the slightest.
At all.
But she loves it. It's weird.
It's super weird. But we missed that generation by a lot.
Yeah,
us as like
we're officially old fucking kids these days.
Well, millennials, we can complain about kids now doing weird shit.
So what'd you call them? You called them bloomers?
Boomers. So that's the generation after us. So we're millennials. The people before us are Gen Xers, and boomers are like the YouTube star kids and the kids who watch video games. People play video games, like. I think the cutoff for millennials was like,
years are
early 20s. Type in millennials age group. It's like early 20s now.
81 to 96.
Oh.
If you were born from 81. I was born in 85.
I was born in 88.
So, yeah. All the way up to 1996 is millennial.
Yeah.
If we do what years are boomers? Oh, this is... baby boomers. I don't want baby boomers. I want new
baby boomers like World War II, but the boomers 40, 60, now 64. I think it's related to the wars in Iraq and everything after that. Like they all come back from war and have a bunch of shitty kids.
What's after millennials? Let's see.
Millennials.
What's after millennials? Hey,
yeah, I'm interested.
Come on.
That's such a weird generation. I grew up without the internet.
Let's see. Generation Z?
No, that's before us, isn't it?
It says 8 key differences between Gen Z and millennials. Gen Z, mid 1990s to early 2000s.
Oh,
So yeah,
Gen Z.
but that's the thing is that's just like obviously in your lexicon, people calling them boomers. It's probably not.
Yeah.
It's probably not like set in stone.
Not yet.
Yeah,
They're probably new and emerging. That's interesting.
yeah. Kids watching. Maybe do you ever live stream your art process?
So at my house I have Google Fiber, but it's the free version, so it's like just barely above dial-up.
Okay.
So if I did have Google Fiber, I would live stream everything. Right now I'm at a point where I can record my screen through I use OBS Studio to record my screen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have time lapse of all of my digital paintings. I have 5. I just posted one today of Shaila and the Orchestration of Time, my most recent painting. So I posted that video. If you go to YouTube, type in Art of Chase or Chase Henson, or if you go to my Instagram or my Facebook, Chase Henson, you can see it's a 15-hour painting condensed down into 4-5 minutes. And I have a friend of mine doing like some lo-fi synth music to it in the background. If you listen to it with headphones, it's like fucking super excellent.
I'm watching your time lapse of a God's denouement.
God's denouement. So that's my apocalypse story. That's the final act of the gods. When the gods lose faith in themselves, there's one God to bring the end. And
I see
she's
some
bringing
of your process. You got like some snakes, pictures of snakes pulled up, kind of like as you're painting. That's pretty.
So
cool.
it's the entire painting process from sketch to color study to final rendering, all the way to the very end. So I pull in my reference and I draw from that. And
Looks
I have
the opening image. You kind of already have like a sketch to start with.
Yeah. So I typically have line work and then color sketch underneath it. And that's how I determine my color palette.
I see.
And then after that, it's deciding on the smaller stuff. So I work from big idea all the way down to the small idea to the rendering to the final product of everything.
Are you using a tablet, like a Wacom tablet?
So for the first like 3 paintings, I use it's called Wacom. It's the most ridiculous name in the world. It should be Wacom because Wacom sounds like masturbation.
Hey,
but
I have a great relationship with masturbation. There's nothing wrong with that.
Everybody. Yeah. No, it should be called Wacom because Wacom sounds like masturbation. But right now, I just recently bought a Cintiq. If you look up Wacom Cintiq, it's a tablet mixed with a very high res monitor.
Okay.
And I'm using a very old version. I'm not using the new black ones. I'm using the older gray ones that are really big. So it's a tablet screen and it's pressure sensitive. So I use a stylus pen like you would an iPad. You know, when you see people drawing on their iPad with an Apple Pen. But I have a very big monitor with a Wacom pen, and I'm painting directly onto the screen digitally using Photoshop. It's literally the same process as I would use if I was painting with oils or acrylic. Like, the idea is the same. It's just digital. There's no drying time.
When you're drawing, are you looking at that screen or your computer screen? Or are you mainly looking at the tablet?
I have 2 screens. So I have a main screen that I pull up my reference on. So if I have a reference of a model, typically if I have a figure in my paintings, I hire a model, I take photographs of her or him in the pose that I want. And typically there's a lot of nudity in the photos, so I don't post them in the videos. So I pull them up on my secondary screen, and I use my tablet, my Wacom Cintiq tablet to paint on, and I record just the painting of the Cintiq monitor.
Oh, okay.
So I have a secondary screen where I can pull up all my references of birds or humans or snakes or whatever I'm fucking using at the time. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I plan the painting from composition. I start with thumbnail sketches. Like if I have a woman in like the goddess of time, like what is the pose that the goddess of time would be in? I would do a little quick sketch and I'd figure out the composition first. I take a photo of the drawing that I did. I bring it into Photoshop. I evolve it, make it bigger, trace over the top of that, really refine the drawing and the composition. I take photo reference after that of the model in the exact pose and the exact lighting. I set up lights just like a photo shoot, like a photographer would do. And then I take the photograph and then I start the painting. I decide on the color palette next. I decide if it's warm or cool. How do I contrast the figure? Is the figure warm? Is the focal point cool? You know, it's just like from the beginning of the fundamentals all the way to the end. Like everything is very thought out so that my process is quick, it's effective, and it's not wasting my time. I'm all about efficiency in art, right? Doing the most or saying the most by doing the least. So I don't have to like endlessly render something or fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I end up with, you know, my best painting, my most recent painting. I would consider my best painting that I've ever done, ever. And I'm super proud of it. And that's not very
Three
often.
Sisters?
Huh?
Is that the most recent one on your portfolio, the Three Sisters?
No, the one next to it, the orchestration of time.
Oh, okay. Let's open this.
That one is my most recent one, as of like last week, I think.
And how many hours did this take?
15.
That's pretty fast, man.
It's super fast for something with figures, 3 figures. That should be 30 to 60, like some insane number. But my process is so efficient and so thought out most of the time. Like I have my moments when I like just do stupid shit and endlessly paint, but I figured out a very efficient process digitally.
So my friend Kelton Cram, that's the concept artist for like a bunch of big Hollywood shit. He said I was asking him a lot about like what is it like actually working, because he's at the top tier. He's talked a little bit about the difference between games and movies is a lot of turnover and a lot of redesigns and like people come in and what this idea. He said it's all about speed.
Too many cooks.
And a lot of that'll happen. He worked on do you remember the movie Edge of Tomorrow?
Yeah.
That was awesome, and that was the opposite. It was, I guess there's like one director that had this super solid idea what he wanted. He was crazy and eccentric. He'd come in. At the time, he was working for an agency. He wasn't freelance. An agency that movie studios would hire for concept art. He'd come in and like yell at everybody, but he would look at everything himself. Whereas other things like Transformers and Turtles, he mainly did Raphael, I believe, on Turtles, and had to go through whatever it was, something like hundreds of variations. And he talks about it's all about time. He's like, not only how competitive the industry is. He's like, not only is everyone really good, but you have to be really, really fast.
Yeah.
And he's talked about it's like you don't actually. He told me this story where he got into art and he had a full-time job. He was doing art and like he got hired by a hotel in China to do all these arts in their hotel rooms, like individual pieces for all these hotel rooms. So he was doing art, and then he went back to school and went to a school called Nomen. And
Nomen Workshop.
Yeah, so he went to
It's
Nomen.
an online course.
Okay, and he was finishing that degree, and he was building everything from scratch. And he took like the armor. I think he said he took an armor chest plate from like another piece of artwork and tweaked it and put it on his, and he felt really bad about it. And he told this professor, he was like, hey man, like my final thing, like actually that chest plate was like I kind of just tweaked something else, like an existing asset. I didn't, and they're doing something with 3D, and then he said the instructor something along the lines of turned to him. He's like, oh, you're finally starting to figure it out. He thought he was getting in trouble, and he's like, really, it's the opposite. He's like, you need to do more of that. You need to like learn how to. And then he explained like kit bashing and all these things where
steal like an artist, dude.
Steal like an artist. So
because there's nothing original, dude. There's nothing original anymore. The most original stories are mythology. The stories of the Hindu gods, the stories of the Greek gods, the story of oh my God, who was the first? The Sumerian mythology. We're talking about Homer.
Yeah.
And what's that first first story in mythology. The Sumerian mythology is the first.
I thought it was like Mesopotamian or Sumerian.
The Iliad.
Sumerian god.
Mesopotamians and the Sumerians. Right? So
I don't know. I'm looking up real quick.
Right, so they're the first.
Yes,
they're the first story.
We're thinking of the same thing. I was thinking Mesopotamia. That's the same thing as Sumerian. I just didn't know that. Yeah.
The first stories ever to be created by humans that are recorded, at least, right? So mythology is the OG of stories and fantasy and fucking the craziest. Have you ever read Hindu mythology?
Nope.
It's fucking bonkers. It's so bonkers. Read the story of Kali and her importance in the Hindu mythology. She's like drinking the blood of demons so that the blood can't recreate versions of the demon itself. She's just like swallowing blood. It's insanity, right? So anything after that is all a remake of mythology. Everything. Every single story. If you look up Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell talks about that, and it's repeated in everything we watch. To the most cliche, to the most complex, there's aspects of mythology in all storytelling. So even in concept art, in visual language, we can't just make something up. We have to come from mythology. We have to come from the things that already exist, the pyramids, Mesopotamians, the fucking who was before us, right? Neanderthals, the cave paintings in France. Like, it's all there. Yeah. Everything already exists. We just mix things together to create a fresh look on an old story.
But when you think about your process with art, though, you're not really. You are building everything from the ground up as far as the actual strokes. It's not like you're because like I know a lot of guys. I've watched concept artists time lapse on ArtStation, where they'll like take a photo and they'll draw over the photo and smear, or they'll manipulate existing. Like they won't paint everything. They'll like bring in a photo, like warp it, do something, put that piece in there, paint over it, mix between photo and painting. Like there's a guy named I think it's Peter Gregory. I follow too many artists on Instagram, but that's the point.
That's a photo bashing technique where they take basically an existing texture and design, paint over the top of it to create something new and fresh.
Yeah.
But what I'm ripping off is mythology, right? So I'm not thinking about a single religion or cultural mythology. I'm not talking about just Hindu mythology. I'm backing up a little bit and looking at world mythology. What are the connecting stories between all of them? There's always a flood story. There's always a creation story. There's always an apocalypse. There's always repentance. There's always Loki, the trickster god. There's just stories of morality throughout all of religion. So I'm taking all of the things that I see that are similar in all the mythologies and deciding I'm going to do a painting on Loki. Who's the trickster god in my story? Who is the god of fortune? Who is the god of sexuality? Who is the goddess of, I don't know, the fucking rain, right?
Yeah.
And back in the day, they used those stories to explain scientific phenomenon. We didn't know why thunder happened, so we blamed it on Thor or Zeus. Zeus was mad because we haven't sacrificed a fucking goat. But science has taken over a lot of those. It's probably why we don't believe in a lot of the old stuff. So I'm ripping off mythology, and I'm taking design and color aspects from other images that I see on Pinterest. I'm not creating anything fresh. I'm just putting my own twist.
You're still outsourcing a lot of the creative work, like colors and references and but you're not actually using photos or anything. I'd be interested.
No, I take photo reference and I use that as my reference for the figures, but anything outside of that, I'm trying my best not to rip. But you can't help it. It's like you can't create a piece of music without ripping someone, you know?
Yeah.
You enjoy gent metal, you're going to do a gent metal fucking riff. You can do a gent metal like drumming.
Do you like Tool?
I do, and they just went on Spotify.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I've been having a Tool resurgence because now I can get them on Spotify, and I've like re-listened to all their music.
It's genius marketing because they have how many albums, and they're about to put out a new one at the end of the month.
Yes.
I did go to see. I saw Tool in Salt Lake when they came last. Worst concert I've ever been to.
Really?
We were at the Maverick Center.
That has bad sound. Maverick Center always has shitty sound.
The worst. It was so bad that I didn't know what song they were playing, and I couldn't hear anything. It was just noise being hit at me from all angles. I must have been in one section of the arena where all of the sound was mixing in, and it was just vibrating for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I've been to the Maverick Center a handful of times. The only time the sound was good is when I was in GA, sort of like 30 feet away from the stage, kind of right in front of it. But anytime I've sat in the seats in the Maverick Center, or Delta Center for that matter, it's just bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, because you get in those corner spots, and I just heard noise. I couldn't hear lyrics. I couldn't hear guitar. Couldn't hear drums. It was literally just sound being blasted at me at high volume for a long time. I paid $100 for that fucking ticket. I was really upset.
Sorry, man. I have another guy, a local musician, loves Tool. He's coming on, and he saw them the last time, and he said it was the best concert he's ever been to. So he must have been in a different spot than you.
Not me. I was in the worst spot. The fucking worst.
You got in a bad spot. Well, sweet, man. Let's wrap this up. I think that it's pretty good. We talked a lot about your art. I think this has been the most... So when I originally thought about doing the podcast, it was like, I want to use the memories of gaming as a sort of a springboard to just talk about more things than just gaming. Yeah. This has probably been the first one that's been closest to what I was envisioning. A lot of the previous episodes have been... it is fun. You kind of go through chronological order of all the games they played and just nerd out. But we got into like mythology. We got into creativity, getting your life, getting your shit together. All because of gaming.
Just games, dude. Yeah, games and movies and TV shows.
Yeah, I originally was like, I could do, because you could take the same idea and apply it to music or movies. Don't steal my idea. I actually own music memories, gaming memories, movie memories, and media memories. But it's just too many to do in one podcast. But that format of like, hey, I want to interview someone that isn't a musician, but talk about the music that influenced them growing up and how that... Yeah. I'm trying to focus on artists, right? Anyone, that's why I reached out to you. Anyone that does any sort of creative artistic work or works in the gaming industry or whatever, and connecting that to playing games growing up and how that got them to where they're at. And I didn't even really brief you on that, and you just made it happen without me telling you.
Well, I've been thinking about it since we talked about it last. Like, what fucking games really influenced me? And I've been thinking about it for a while. So I was like, mentally I was prepped, and I was like, man, when we actually set a date, I'm going to write stuff down. I'm going to be super prepped. But we were like last minute, like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Okay, great. Fucking let's do it. And it was just like this constant, honest flow. And I mean, whiskey helps and a little bit of beer. So
I have you don't make fun of me, but I've been drinking White Claws lately.
Oh boy! Oh wow!
But they don't make me feel bloated, and so whatever. I like beer.
That's what whiskey and ice is for, my man.
That's true. But the problem is the L store closes at 7, and if you're out, your only option is Smith's. And if I go to Smith's,
adult store.
I do like Smith is now carrying. If anyone likes Japanese beers, they carry Sapporo. And what's the other one? Asahi. Kirin and Asahi. I like Asahi the most.
Yeah, me too.
Problem is, if I pound Asahis, I just feel like, whoa.
Yeah, it's like a lighter beer, but there's tons of froth to it.
Yeah. So I've been doing White Claws lately because my wife will drink them too. So, but yeah. People have been giving me so much shit. Oh, you're drinking a White Claw? You know what? I'm a grown-ass man. I work for myself. I will drink what I want, bitch. I like them.
That's great.
All right, man, we'll do this again. I do want to do multiple episodes. Like, I don't want people...
Please.
I want people to come on again. So what I'm thinking is, like, kind of give some time, and maybe if there's a new game that, like... we didn't talk about... We could maybe save this for last time, which is so dumb that we didn't bring it up yet. Or we could talk about it. I do got to wake up kind of early, but... everything you've talked about, art style, storytelling, gods and mythology... all comes together to my favorite game I've played probably of all time now, and it's a recent game, which is the newest God of War.
Oh,
have you played the newest God of War?
No, but the art for that game was
oh my God.
So beyond
you need to play it so bad. I'm willing. I'm not using my PS4 Pro. You can borrow my PS4 Pro.
Dude, I will take that from you. I will take you up.
You, of all people, need to play that game.
The art was amazing. It's absolutely incredible. Justin Sweet and Vance Kovacs were the concept artists for that game, and they were just pumping out pieces of art after the game came out. Justin Sweet and Vance Kovac.
There's another guy that is called like Raph Grassetti or something. He's like the main modeler for God of War. I've seen him. I don't know. There's so many. That whole studio is just full of killers.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even a AAA title. It was a quadruple A title.
Yeah.
The artists that they brought in, it was beyond gaming. I haven't played it, but the art was amazing, so I know it's good. If you bring in good artists, most of the time it's usually a good deal.
The art is amazing. The story, I don't want to ruin. The less you know, the better. But that's the only game that I can think of in recent memory. Actually, probably the only game besides The Last of Us. It's made me cry. Last of Us made me cry. God of War made me cry like multiple times through the campaign. It's so good, and it's all like it's. I can't believe you haven't played it, because the whole time you were talking about mythology, I was like, oh, we got to get to God of War, because I'm sure he loves this game. Because it's everything you like. Everything you like in a game.
I'll play it. If you let me borrow it, I will literally play the shit out of it.
So the actual game is another... I borrowed the game from a friend. So
I'll buy it. I'll buy it used.
Okay. I know I can give you the PS4, but I don't know if I can give you the game, because it's not my game to give. But I'll give you the PS4 to play.
Fuck yeah.
All right, man. And then that'll be our next podcast. After you beat God of War, then we can talk about God of War.
Also, so I'm doing a Kickstarter for my book around November for the whole mythology thing that I'm putting together. So maybe I'll play God of War. We'll promote the next Kickstarter. We'll do like we'll double up on talking about games, interests, whatever. We'll work it out.
Well, the podcast is new. I don't know if it's going to help you that much, but I'll do my best to promote it.
Anything helps. Anything helps.
All right, man. I appreciate it. We're gonna hit stop recording. 3, 2, 1. See you guys later.
And that is a wiggity wrap. Thank you for listening to the entirety of the podcast. As always, that warms my prophetic soul. Next, all you got to do is just basically give me 10% of your money and turn over your women to me, and the gaming gods will be happy. If you're not willing to do that, that's okay for now. What you can do is sit patiently, twiddle your thumbs, and get ready for next week's episode. We have Decay, or Decay, depending on how you want to pronounce it. One of my age-old friends, one of the original producers that was on Damn Son, the record label that I helped start. He makes awesome bass music. He loves video games. You guys are going to definitely enjoy the show, so make sure to check it out next week. Until then, go forth, spread the good news of the gaming gospels. I love ya. Peace.